Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Strap yourselves in. I'm going to introduce you all in a second. We've got a long night ahead of us, but I will be your ringmaster tonight. My name is Stephen Rabinowitz. Welcome to our 2021 NFL Draft Special. This is on the Sports Lines. It's Draft Day 2021, and we have real people in a real city of Cleveland, and they're about to get a real hug from Roger Goodell. Good for them, ladies and gentlemen. Dang. Lives have become real, and ladies and gentlemen, NFL dreams will become real tonight. We will be with you all throughout pretty much all of round one in the NFL draft, talking locals, top 5 picks, big name QBs, you name it. We'll go ad nauseum about it. So let me introduce the players tonight. First up, the man who was waiting for the Steelers pick at like the late 20s, like he usually is. 24. Okay. I don't really care about anything after the Jets pick at 23, and that's who this right after that. But good evening, Mr. Kaplan. Jay Kaplan is with us. Any opening thoughts about tonight?
I am really going to be interested to see how the quarterbacks get sorted in this draft once we get past Trevor Lawrence at number 1 overall. It's going to, especially how the 49ers go at number 3. That's the hot one.
Yeah, the 49ers has been really the key to this draft, and we'll get to their pick when we get to it. But Mr. Anthony Strait is also with us, back from his little bout with COVID. We are glad to see you healthy, and we are glad to see you are perfectly well and ready to join us on what will be a crazy night. Good evening, sir.
Hey, what's going on? I mean, yeah, it's been a crazy couple of weeks, but I'm happy to be back. Not quite 100%. I mean, I think my 6-year-old nephew could beat me in a foot race at this point, but yeah, I'm feeling good. I'm feeling great. I just want, as long as the hashtag Boo Goodell comes back this year, I'm all for it.
I don't know. Cleveland is actually happy for once, so that might be a little bit different. They might be enjoying actually having 50,000 people watching this NFL draft tonight. And with us for the second consecutive year going through the madness that is this 3-hour tour, plus a little bit more, is Mr. Joe Tufaro, our good friend, writer from many places, including Still Last Word on Sports, sir?
Yes, sir.
All right. Good evening, sir. Your opening thoughts.
Oh, just again, excited to be here. Thank you guys for inviting me. I always enjoy coming and having a little conversation and see where we go. It's going to be interesting. I'm reading all these stats on the screen about how quarterbacks have never gone in the first 4 picks, and how none of these guys, except for Trevor Lawrence, has actually lost a game in college. It's pretty amazing. So it'll be interesting to see how it all falls.
All right, so we actually haven't gotten any official picks yet, but because we're mind readers, I think we are going to talk about that eventual number 1 overall pick that's about to come. Guys, has any of you in the audience or any of you 3 been living under a rock? Yes? No? Well, if you have, welcome back to Earth. And Joe Biden is president, Donald Trump was president, and we've been going through some hell over the last few years. But if you haven't been living under a rock, you know, if you have a brain, that the first pick of the draft is about to be the Jacksonville Jaguars selecting their new franchise quarterback, Trevor Lawrence from Clemson. The rest of us have known this for about 4 to 5 months. You people who are living under the rock, again, welcome. Trevor Lawrence is a guy who looks like a girl who's about to be playing quarterback in the National Football League. Now, guys, just remember the Jacksonville Jaguars did have a top 5 pick before, and he was Blake Bortles, and he has now become a Jacksonville Jaguars laughingstock. No reason to actually compare Bortles to Trevor Lawrence. Joe, any reason to worry about this pick for the Jaguars?
I don't think so. I think he's played a lot of games. He's played in a lot of big games. He seems to be able to handle different situations. He's going to a coach that's used to college kids, so he's going to be able to understand what he's like coming out of college. Again, these guys are young. You realize that at this point. But also, we talked about this last year a little bit, and we've talked about it on the show a lot. Now that the rookie class is paid on a certain way, picking quarterbacks is now famous again at the top. And there's almost 2 boards. there's the board of quarterbacks, and then there's the board of this is how you would pick guys if they were really just coming out and you were picking the best athlete. So I think you're going to get the top 3 or 4. I don't think there's a problem taking Trevor. I don't think there's a problem picking Zach Wilson. I don't think there's a problem picking any of these guys, to tell you the truth. But the fact that guys are getting forced into playing right away, he is one of the better picks, and I think he's going to do just fine.
He has a very good legacy at Clemson. The first year that he was like a real starter, he dominated. And if you remember that national title game in San Francisco, where he basically, I'll flat out say, embarrassed Alabama's vaunted defense and really forced Alabama to really change exactly who they really are and become an offense team first and really have almost all of the best pros in the National Football League. You'll see that Trevor Lawrence, it's funny though, the way that he actually stayed in school that extra year instead of, not playing might have hurt him a little bit because we saw a little bit of flaws in this game and he did pretty pitiful in the Sugar Bowl. But yeah, if there's been a franchise quarterback who's almost ready, I almost compare it to Andrew Luck. It's Trevor Lawrence. We'll talk about my thoughts again in a little while, but let's talk about Anthony. What do you think about Trevor Lawrence going on?
You know what? He's a gamer. That's what I can tell you about that. You realize he's 86-4 since high school. Like that is a very long. That's a lot of winning when you consider high school and college. He's a national champion, ACC Offensive Player of the Year last year, third team All-American in 2020. He actually missed 2 games due to COVID. That you have to throw that in too, and still threw for an average over 300 yards passing per game. And I mean, he's the guy of all the quarterbacks. And like I said, I think it's a more of a preferable choice as far as all these quarterbacks are concerned. But of all of them that could probably step in and be ready to play in the NFL right away, it is Trevor Lawrence. When you think about all the big games he's played, he has athleticism. He's a dual threat capable. We've seen him. He has the ability to scramble and run and get big plays and chunks on the ground. He can escape. He can keep players alive. But the one thing that does concern me about Trevor Lawrence is the fact that he is can he adapt to the speed of the NFL? I mean, we saw it in a game against I guess it was Virginia Tech last year that he had a hard time kind of adjusting to some of the defensive reads at the line of scrimmage. Also, like it's the little things like his passes sometimes can be a little inconsistent. He has to improve on taking shots down the field, trying to be a little more accurate. And those are, like I said, those are little things that can be fixed along the way. The thing is, like I said, Jacksonville is a little bit of a team that's just going into the rebuild. I think he'll be a lot better than Blake Bortles, who at this point is just just a punching bag for the.
I don't even know what team he's on anymore.
Yeah, but
Rabbi, he'll be somebody's QB2. At some point during, we'll know once OTAs and
maybe
QB3
more like it though. He
was
picked up last year at a certain point. When you fail, you're done.
Yeah, look, at this point, Blake Bortles is only famous for being a punchline in the Good Place. One of my favorite shows. But other than that, this is a no-brainer. I mean, the Jaguars going with Trevor Lawrence. Of all the guys, he's the one ready to step in and play right away and maybe make an impact and help the Jaguars at least try to win some games and return to some respectability. Keep in mind, they won the first game last year and won a dreadful losing streak. Like, I mean, I love Garden Minshew with the best of them, but I don't think he's the quarterback for this team. So the right thing to do is press the reset button, get your franchise quarterback, and go from there.
What's going to be interesting to me, Rabbi, is the dominoes that are going to fall for some quarterbacks and some teams after this first round is done. In terms of, Anthony talked, you think about all the moves that have already been made. Sam Darnold going to the Carolina Panthers, Teddy Bridgewater going out to Denver, other quarterbacks who, once this draft settles, how many of these guys are in a spot right now and may not be in that spot. I mean, you've got Shanahan and Lynch, refusing to say whether Jimmy Garoppolo is even going to be on the roster.
Well, to be fair, no one knows if we're all going to live by Sunday.
That's fine. And it goes to the comment I made before the show about, GMs and coaches do disinformation, in advance of the NFL draft better than the KGB did during the Cold War. But it is going to be interesting because there are dominoes, in the quarterback carousel and in rooms across the league that have not fallen yet, but will. And I think what's really going to be interesting is once we get past this top tier, how does the rest of the quarterback draft shake out? Where does a guy like Trask go? Where does Mond go? The guys who are being mentioned in the next conversation. So to me, it's going to be interesting to see, who takes those guys and why. I mean, the biggest thing, and we're going to talk about it tonight, and it's something that Joe and I have talked about, and it's something that, fans, and I don't expect fans to get this, but there's even people in the media who don't seem to get this. You can't look at a quarterback in a vacuum. You have to look at it. Does he fit the scheme for the team to which he's been drafted to? And so many times that does not happen. And that is why a guy is a bust. It's not that he doesn't have the talent, doesn't have the IQ. He winds up in a place where he's not best suited for.
Well, to be fair, as we're about to hear Roger Goodell getting booed, apparently, as Anthony is hoping. To be fair, though, it's also the fact that some teams just don't have the scheme for that quarterback, though. And I think one great example is going to be Trevor Lawrence when he comes to the Jaguars, because I think Urban Meyer, he has a coach-to-pro team. He's almost like the Nick Saban of coaches. And one of the reasons why Nick Saban didn't really have success in the NFL is because he didn't have Drew Brees. He would have, if he had Drew Brees, he might have been successful. I don't know what Urban Meyer is going to run. Urban is been a very different coach. He still doesn't understand the pro game. And even if he does fail in the system, that doesn't mean that Trevor Lawrence is a bad quarterback, though, Jay.
No, and the one thing that people like to talk about in relation to Lawrence is that this is a type of guy with his skill set. He's a what you call a scheme diverse quarterback. And so he's the type of guy, and it's rare that you get this, a guy who, based on, what we see on tape and the skill set that he has, ideally should be able to adapt and flourish no matter the scheme. So some guys, when you have the full toolbox and you have the right makeup, it doesn't matter the scheme you're drafted into, you're going to be fine. But for the most part, the other quarterbacks in this draft all have holes in their resume that if they wind up in a system where instead of the coach or coordinator adapting their system to what he does well and does an Adam Gase, for lack of a better example, this is my system, you run my system, then that quarterback is going to fail. So it'll be interesting to see not only where these quarterbacks fall, but who they fall to and whether or not their skill set is a good fit for the scheme they're going to be asked to run, at least, from past experience with what we've seen by whoever runs the show on that side of the ball, from last year or in years past. So that'll be interesting to see. And that's one of the things that I'm looking at, because not every team is good at coaching up a guy to fit their system or adapting their system to fit that guy.
Well, I do think one thing that we're going to talk about in a few minutes, as we see the Jaguars are now officially on the clock, one thing that we're going to see is, we'll talk when we get to the 49ers pick. It's been weeks of, is it going to be Mac Jones? Is it going to be Trey Lance? Two people who, I've seen a lot of Mac Jones in Alabama. and I was impressed in some cases, and in other cases, I think it's a system quarterback. And in the case of Trey Lance, it's almost an incomplete for me. I don't watch a lot of Division I AA football, and I don't know what Trey Lance is going to be. He has a lot of immeasurables, but
he played one game this past year. There wasn't a lot of tape to watch.
There wasn't a lot of tape to watch, but he played other games back in the day.
Right.
So you have to look at that. If you look
that's fair. But he played in a run-heavy offense for the Bison. So it's hard to extrapolate. He played in the year before when he played the full season. He basically has one season as a starter, and he played in an offense where he threw about 18 times a game, and they ran the ball 45 times a game. So you're right, Rabbi. It is an incomplete. People are extrapolating his skill sets and what his work ethic and the IQ, and extrapolating whether or not how that will transition to the pro level. And that's why he's an intriguing guy. But again, it's a question of, does he fall to a spot where the guy who's going to be running the show has shown the ability to develop quarterbacks?
All right. So before we continue to have a discussion with the best quarterback about quarterbacks and what they will be, I was never a quarterback, so I can't talk as much apparently as some of these other people over here. But Jay, you were talking about us when we were going on the air that you do see a flaw in Trevor Lawrence's game. Tell us what it is and why.
Yeah, well, I mean, here's the thing. I mean, everybody talks about the strengths that this guy has. The guy, his mechanics are fluid. He can change arm angles without sacrificing velocity. Strong arm, makes every throw in the book, the deep out, which is the one that people, and this is the one that doesn't get run during the pro day. If you look at the pro day highlights for all of these guys, they're throwing, down the field. They're throwing crossers. They're throwing posts. They're throwing flies. No one's throwing the 15-yard out, which if you think about it, especially if it's from the other hash mark, that's a 30-yard throw. So that's the one that, you need to be able to do that. And yeah, we all know Trevor's got, timing and touch, and he can throw between levels of the defense. He anticipates well, he processes his reads. He calls out protections, and he reads coverages. Here's the thing, though. The thing that concerns me is that, anticipation is a bit of an issue. Sometimes he's been known to hold the ball, wait for his receiver to get open or make breaks before throwing the ball. What we call throwing the receiver open. That's something I think he needs to work on. He also, if you don't do that, it allows defenders to recover and converge and potentially break on a route. I think he needs to improve a little bit on looking off routes or defenders, throw the ball a little earlier. In the NFL, quarterbacks have to start their throwing motion well before receivers turn around, anticipating where they'll be, put the ball on a line, and even doing it while taking a hit. The timing and location of those passes allows the receiver to run after the catch and potentially get him a score. Teams, you look at Mahomes, you look at Allen, you look at Herbert. Teams aren't just looking for quarterbacks with a strong arm who can't move. They want the entire package. But all that being said, here's an interesting nugget that I kind of uncovered, is that if Trevor Lawrence does have a weakness through his career at Clemson, it was throwing against man-to-man versus throwing against the zone. 2018 to 2020. We don't have enough stats on land, so this is just in comparison to Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, and Justin Fields. Completion rate is last. He's at 53%. Mac Jones is at 66, Wilson 61, Fields 58. Yards per drop back. Jones is at 11.4. Lawrence is at 8.4. Quarterback rating. Jones 95.8, Fields 91.5, Lawrence 83.1. This is a guy who, after completing 58% of his passes with a quarterback rating of 92 as a freshman against what was deemed man coverage, those numbers threw to 48% and 74% in 2019, 2020. Yeah, he had some, his receiving cores wasn't as good as, say, what Jones had or Fields had in 2020. But, it's just something that you kind of need to look at. You look at the film, And especially during the playoffs in 2019, 7 of 25 for 105 yards, 2 sacks, no touchdowns against man. And here's the thing, guys. Of zone in college is in the neighborhood of 1.5 to 1 in favor of zone. In the NFL, it's closer to 50-50. So if just think that's a red flag, and I don't know that it's a red, it might be yellow, it might be orange. It
Like
would
Clemson,
be
like Clemson.
Jacksonville
So it really
Jaguars.
is an orange
Yeah.
flag.
Right, there you go. So Jacksonville, I think, needs to make sure that they have receivers who can do damage against man coverage, and the Jaguars receivers were below average in this area against man coverage. NFL wideouts and tight ends tend to average about a 62% catch rate and 12 yards per catch, with about 25% of these passes thrown into what's defined as a tight window, where the separation between the receiver and is less than a yard when the ball's coming to you. Jacksonville's top 5, Chenault, Clark, Cole, who is no longer there, Connolly, and Tyler Eifert, they averaged a 56% catch rate and 30% of throws in a tight window. So they need to give Lawrence guys who can make the tough catches against man-to-man in a tight window, so to kind of offset that Clemson colored flag, if you will. Other than that, the guy checks all the boxes. I mean, we know this.
You know what? I'll say this as well. If Urban Meyer's smart, he'll give him a good running game, because the guy absolutely excels in the play action and quick passing game. Those short 5-10 yards routes. Like I said, I mean, Trevor Lawrence, he checks all the boxes. I mean, he finds flaws in his game. It's kind of nitpicking, but I mean, look, the Jaguars have lost literally 15 games after they won Week 1 against Indianapolis last season.
Another game.
They gotta get a win at this point. I mean, they gotta do something, and like I said, this is a slam dunk without question.
Well, I think one thing that we're gonna do, and I'll hold off a second while we kill time before this Jacksonville pick. I think one thing that I don't notice a little less out of Lawrence is his running game was a little weaker last year, but a lot of the things that happened last year are almost negated by the fact that it was such a weird season. Lawrence had COVID midway through it. We've never known what the actual effects of COVID are afterwards. Anthony is kind of learning those effects now. As he said, he can't really win a foot race with anybody except probably myself. But if that's the case, I really, really think that you got to take some of the stuff that happened in that 2020 season with a grain of salt. And before we get back to you, Jay, we haven't heard from Joe in a while. With Trevor Lawrence, what he did in college, and especially with Urban Meyer there as his head coach, does this relate to almost a college type offense coming in to Jacksonville?
Rabbi, as you said, it's going to be interesting to see what kind of scheme Urban Meyer runs offensively. Is he going to go look? And we all know that the spread concepts are becoming more and more prevalent. So it's entirely possible that a lot of his concepts will actually work at the pro level. The question is whether Urban Meyer is going to be my scheme, or he's going to look at what he has in Trevor, what he has in the weapons around him, what type of offensive line he has, and he'll mold and futz around with that scheme to put his players in best position to succeed. And the thing is, without Trevor, and this is something that we kind of lose, is that his high completion percentage was aided by a lot of quick hit, one read passes. He did not spend a lot of time in this scheme going through multiple progressions, and having above average weapons in play calling. And let's face it, guys, the ACC was not a dominant league. So the best competition he played against was in the playoffs against, the likes of Alabama and Ohio State. So here it is.
Well, it never is. And as we have Trevor Lawrence as the #1 pick, let me go back to Joe for a second to wrap it up before we get to pick number 2, as I cued him beforehand. Joe, what do you think his chances for success are going to really be in the NFL?
Well, I think the fact that, you got to remember when Urban Meyer was hired. He was hired in January when we all knew who the pick was going to be. So he's planning on having Trevor Lawrence as his quarterback, and he's going to, whatever offensive coordinator, whatever he's going to build around, whatever system he's going to do, he's already sat down with him and said, what does he do well? What does he not do well? He's watched all the same film that Jay has. He's read all those things. He understands. This isn't Doug Peterson and giving him a new quarterback and saying, here, can you make this work? This is a new coach that said, I'll come back because we have the #1 pick. And I know who it's going to be, by the way. And so we're going to build around him and we're going to make it work. So I think he's going to be fine with the coaching staff and with the system. Whether he's successful or not is up to him.
Who's never actually.
Rabbi, I'll tell you this, and you know, a lot of the things that Trevor Lawrence has said, you know, about the fact that he's comfortable with who he is, he's happy with his life. He's married to his longtime girlfriend. They got married recently. He loves to play football and he wants to be the best who ever did it. But, you know, he's not focused where this is the only thing in my life. And this is a great line from the Sports Illustrated article on him. Trevor Lawrence is out to prove absolutely nothing. This will either be the reason he makes the Hall of Fame or the reason he doesn't. Is it official, Rabbi? No.
It is official. It is official.
No, I mean the Jets. Is it official?
No, we'll get to
Not
pick
yet.
number
Okay.
2 in a second, but let's start talking about it because let's close our eyes and imagine we're actually at MetLife Stadium. And unfortunately, Joe, there's no blue around in the stands. It's green. I'm sorry. That's the way this thing works. The second worst secret in the NFL after former QB of the future, Sam Darnold, also, guys, by the way, a number 3 overall pick, just like Blake Bortles, got traded to Carolina, is the drafting of BYU quarterback Zach Wilson with the Jets' number 2 overall pick. Not official yet, but I'm sure when we're talking, it will be. So let's start with you again, Jay, who, pat yourself on the back, said this would happen a while ago.
Yeah.
Do you like Zach Wilson in New York? Is the hype about him warranted?
Yeah, I like him here. You know, this is a kid who, you know, he's quick-minded. He's creative. Great ball handling skills. The big thing everybody talks about, you know, is his ability to make plays off platform. You know, you've seen it in games. You've seen it in his pro day. Not that I put as much stock in that. You know. He has the ability to make great spontaneous decision. He throws with high accuracy and velocity. You know, he's able to throw off platform, which is, we know this is becoming a more and more treasured skill. The question is, how much development will he need as he transitions to the NFL game? I mean, the ideal situation for him would be to sit and learn for a year like Mahomes did in Kansas City, you know, while he sharpens up his technique, learns how to improve his process. That's probably not going to happen with the Jets. So you got to be, if you're the Jets coaching staff and you're Michael LaFleur, the offensive coordinator, you got to be patient and comfortable in their ability to develop him. Look, I like this pick. You know, look, he's got outstanding foot quickness. You know, he's got great mobility. He's a compact delivery, gets the ball up and out. He's got great, you know, velocity on his passes from various arm angles. You know, he's able to generate power. He's naturally accurate. He understands ball placement. You know, quick touch. He thinks quickly on his feet, which is good. You know, and this is these are things that, you know, you want in a quarterback coming into the NFL. Great, you know, he had a great final year in college, but before that, not so much. And the thing is look, we know BYU, you know, didn't play top level competition. You know, I mean, look, he did everything you want to do in the offense he played in, which is a very heavy RPO based play action scheme, and, you know, did a little bit of everything. They played some I formation, some 5 wide. They ran some options. So he has, you know, a broad skill base in terms of things he's shown he's been able to do. You know, does he have the ideal body type? No, you know, he's a little small. I mean, he's 6'2", you know, so, you know, you worry about that a little bit. But, I mean, I think he's going to, unless the Jets bring in, you know, a veteran quarterback, you know, a la, you know, what the Chiefs did where Alex Smith, you know, kind of held the door for him, you know, for a year. I don't see how he's going to have to start from from day one. And as much as the Jets, as the gangrene, fan base is going to be huzzahing, this pick, because they've all been wanting to move on from Sam Darnold for a while. I think the expectations need to get tempered, because again, you're moving from a college situation where he was the big fish in a small pond in that conference, to being the expected to be big fish in about the biggest NFL pond there is in New York. So, it'll be interesting. I'll let you guys, kind of take over. I got some other stuff to throw at you later, but I'll let you guys, chime in with your thoughts here.
Anthony, immediately before you duck all of those things that Jay is about to throw at you, let's talk about Zach Wilson, who's about to become officially the Jets' new QB.
Yeah, first of all, a little tidbit. Can you believe the Jets to be, obviously they're going to pick Zach Wilson, but they'll be the first team in NFL history to draft 2 quarterbacks in the top 3 in the last 5 years, in like a span of 5 years. So that just tell you that the Jets' inability to develop a competent quarterback in their history, outside of maybe a few exceptions, I give Chad Pennington in that equation. The Jets really have a hard time having getting a franchise quarterback and being able to keep him for an extended period of time. But Zach Wilson, we're talking about Zach Wilson is pretty much made himself a top 5 pick based on last season. 33 passing touchdowns, 11-1 and 12 starts, 10 rushing touchdowns on top of that. They were just showing some footage of his pro day, and he has a great touch on the deep ball, all out like Aaron Rodgers. It gives a chance, an opportunity to go on for the 50-50 ball. So let me see. I got some of my notes here. Yeah.
Well, Zach Wilson is officially the pick now, so let's keep going.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he has great presence in the pocket. He can stem plays, have great mobility. He's going to struggle. He's going to be honest. His rookie season, he's going to struggle because right now, I don't think the Jets have enough to really help him to be successful right away. So he's going to pretty much be trial by fire. But like I said, if you look back at his college years, I mean, it's clearly his production ramped up. I won't hold the competition he played last season against him. Remember, it was a COVID year. So much was up in the air. So like I said, I think I said this on Monday. You're only responsible for the teams that's in front of you that you have to beat. And Zach Wilson did just that. And and by the way, it's official. Zach Wilson is a New York Jet. So like I said, Jet fans should be happy to get a franchise quarterback. Now you have to, worry yourself about surrounding him with pretty much everything. The Jets have a lot of holes they need to fill. So the only thing I would tell Jet fans right now is to temper the expectations. It's a rebuilding year. You want Zach Wilson to get better. You want him to get some experience. You want him to really adapt to the game. He ran a heavy run pro option offense. It's going to be interesting, like Jay mentioned, with Trevor Lawrence and some of the other quarterbacks that's going to come later on, how the coaches adjust their game plan, their style to the quarterback they have. Far too often we see them trying to put a round hole in a square peg, or how you say that. I got the hardball brothers. Yeah, I got the hardball brothers, John and Jim, respectively, and how they were able to change their offenses to the quarterback they had. We saw Jim do it in San Francisco. He went from Alex Smith to Colin Kaepernick, and we also see John do it when
from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson.
Lamar Jackson added more RPO heavy offense, more surrounding the running game, and more towards his ability to be a dual threat. So it's going to be interesting to see what the Jets can and what they can do as far as bringing the best out of Wilson that you saw at BYU, and that's some of the flaws, like some of the things he did do when he's under pressure, or when he doesn't get onto a great start, he starts to struggle a little bit, and also and when he's in the pocket too, his ball security. This is something we talked about with Daniel Jones. You're gonna have to teach him a little ball security if he's going to be in a pocket. Trying to take the big shots downfield.
Absolutely, Anthony. I think that ball security is going to be a big key. That number of 33 touchdowns to 3 interceptions last year is going to help. He had a very good 2020 campaign. And Joe, this is the reason why he's over here. You've been a pretty much staunch hater of Sam Darnold for years on this show. Do you think the Jets got it right with Wilson?
Oh yeah, no, I think it's a better pick, and it goes back to what Jay and I were talking about, also with these values, because just like they did in Arizona, when you knew you picked Josh Rosen wrong, you threw him away the next year and you picked Kyler Murray. So you can make these changes now within that first 3 or 4 years when you realize he's not the guy. I'm sitting here laughing a little bit, chuckling at Jay and Anthony when they say that Jet fans need to temper their enthusiasm. There's no such thing.
Look, Joe, I know I'm spitting at the wind with that one. I fully understand that.
No such thing. This is the same. I heard this exact conversation 3 years ago when they picked Sam Darnold. Oh, that's the guy we wanted. They put out a thank you on Twitter for the Giants picking Barkley and leaving Sam Darnold for them to get, because he was going to be the next great thing. And I just hope, again, the kid's going to have to play from day one. He has no weapons unless whoever they're going to get tonight, hopefully a running back, not some 40-year-old guy. They have no wide receivers. They have no tight end. Their offensive line's falling apart, and they have the worst defense in the NFL. Other than that, he's going to be a superstar. He's a good kid. He's played a lot of football. I like the fact that he's played a lot of football. He's not Mark Sanchez, who played 12 games.
No.
He's not Sam Darnold, who played 15 games. He is, and they're putting them all up on the board now. But he's played in 3 bowl games, so he's been around. He sees things. Yes, he's coming from Utah and moving to New York, which is going to be a little bit of a culture shock. And the Jets aren't very good at making those transitions for their players because of the way that their system is set up, because their practice facilities in a different place than where the stadium is and different things. So it makes it a little bit tougher on people to do. But with a new coach and a new organization, unfortunately, the Johnson brothers still run vaccines and they still run the New York Jets. So we'll see how that pans out. But I think he's got a fair shot at being pretty good here. And he's a much better choice than Sam Darnold. He's a much better choice than Mark Sanchez. He does have some weaknesses, Jay, as you've seen. He likes to throw with both feet off the ground.
Yeah.
Which, other than Joe Namath, that didn't really work too well for too many guys coming into the NFL.
It didn't really work for Joe
And
Namath
doesn't
either,
need-
though.
Here's the thing that I want to see how he adjusts. BYU's offensive line was unreal last year. They gave Wilson some unreal pockets. There were times when there was no one within 7 yards of Wilson when he got to the top of his drop. When he has a clean pocket, he's capable of excellent ball placement. When the pocket gets pushed in on him, his accuracy took a little dip, and that's a little bit of concerning. He gets bothered a little bit. You see this on film. He gets bothered a little bit when he feels the pocket collapsing directly in front of him. Here's just an interesting stat, guy. Percentage of passes thrown after at least 3 seconds, and we all know 2.5 is the measuring stick. 35% of his passes last year came with at least 3 seconds. Justin Fields was next at 34, Jones at 34, Lawrence at 23. Here's the bigger one, guys. Passes of at least 4 seconds, 14%, Fields 8, Jones 6, Lawrence 6. This is a guy whose completion percentage ranged from 62 to 69, to over 20 yards per completion when he's had anywhere from 3 to 4 seconds to throw. He faced so little pressure last year, that he struggled when he had to play against a defense with a top 30 sack rate. And that was Houston, BSU, and Coastal. He was 10 for 22 under pressure. That's something I want to see, because we all know the Jets' offensive line is not among the NFL's elite, and it did not have the greatest, win sack rate last year. So how he adapts to that, and a lot of people think his ability to throw off platform will be why he will be okay. But I don't know. We'll see if he gets happy feet or gets nervous, because the offensive line's not going to be anything close to what he got at BYU.
But the difference you might see between him and Sam is when Sam got that pressure, he'd make that bad throw. He'd throw that interception.
All the
Yeah.
time.
Yeah.
All the time.
If he learns to throw the ball away and to do different things with it, then he'll already be better. But that's the decision-making that you're looking for in the first year is what does he do when he's not in a perfect situation? Does he panic and run and do something with it, or does he throw it up to the other team, or does he just throw it away? So
You know
It would
what?
be
I'll
best-
piggyback on what Joe just said, because one of the fallbacks of Wilson is that he looks too much for the big play downfield. How he adjusts to what the defenses are going to give him, because NFL defense, we see all too often, they're going to take away what you're good at and force you to adjust to what you can't do or what you're not impatient of doing. And if he's able to he got to take the occasional dink and dunk and toss the hero ball out to the side, because he makes a mistake. He tries to take too many shots downfield. Defense are going to make him pay. As good as he is against the cover, and as good as he is against the cover too, they will trick him. They're going to mix it up, and it's going to be interesting.
All right, guys, before we continue, because the host gets pay traffic cop here. Yes, as Anthony just said, one of the most annoying tropes, guys. One of the most annoying tropes that I've heard in the last few weeks is the draft starts at blank. Well, guess what? I'm following that. Ever since they traded with the Miami Dolphins for the number 3 pick a few weeks ago, people have said the draft starts with the San Francisco 49ers. It's no secret that their QB of the future is being picked here. But who exactly is that QB? It's Trey Lance,
That is
quarterback
surprising.
of North Dakota State. He kind of became the favorite in a lot of odds makers earlier today. A lot of people thought this pick would be Mac Jones. You also did, Jay. Let's talk about it now.
Well, I mean, here's the reason why I thought it would be Mac Jones. And it's because, everybody talks about the things that he doesn't do well, but it seemed, at least on paper and on the film that I watched, that this is the type of quarterback that fits Kyle Shanahan's scheme. This is a guy who is a drop back pocket type of quarterback that Shanahan usually prefers. He's the type of guy that Shanahan wouldn't have to adjust much, who could be dropped into the 49ers scheme from day one and make the passes the scheme requires. I mean, here's this is an interesting comment from a quarterback coach who watched film on Mac Jones. Quote, "In my mind, if I had to win right now this year, he's the most advanced quarterback of any of them. I think Trevor's the best bet. I'm co-signing on him, but his system adjustment will be much bigger than Mac's. Jones is going to walk in day one, just have to flip terminology because he's going to know pro football. He's been coached by Steve Sarkisian. He understands run checks, understands moving protections. Not that the others don't, but he's on a different level. The question is, are Mac Jones' physical tools worthy of being a top 5 pick or even first round? I don't know that his physical abilities warrant that, but if you tell me I have to win now, I think his physicals are good enough. How many guys in the history of football in 12 games against top college competition threw for 4,500 yards, 41 touchdowns, 4 picks, and completed 70%, 77% in a prone system? Some guys at a pro day don't do 77% on air. So, look, I was all ready to kind of defend Mac Jones because for those reasons, I thought, like some people did, that Jones would be not necessarily the best quarterback to pick at number 3, but the guy who most skill set wise, IQ wise, he seemed to be the guy who best fit Shanahan's scheme. So this is a bit of a surprise, but if you guys, the other guys that were mocked, Lance was the only other quarterback that was to the Niners at 3 on a lot of drafts. If it wasn't Jones, it was Lance. It's an interesting pick because he does have more rough edges than Mac Jones does, but there are a lot of people who believe this kid's upside is exponentially higher than Mac Jones.
The only thing I'm going to say is, and I have been a detractor, I think you know this, Jay, of the Niners picking Jones for a while, is Lance has a ceiling. Lance's ceiling is high.
Yes.
He has a lot of adjustment to do. Yes, and I think as we've seen, if everything is to be believed, the 49ers were basically willing to Ricky Williams this draft and the next 3 or 4 to get Aaron Rodgers from the Packers, and the Packers said, nah, we ain't about that noise. So when you come to this pick, I think you can see a top flight Lamar Jackson-like quarterback. I don't think it's going to take 2 years because I agree. This is not a Shanahan type quarterback. No. It can be a Shanahan type quarterback because, again, as we've talked about before, the great coaches like the Harbaughs tailor their scheme to the quarterback that's running it. In this player empowerment league, you better tailor your scheme to the person who is your signal caller, because the signal caller is the face of your franchise. I see a lot of Colin Kaepernick in Trey Lance. I see a lot of Lamar Jackson in Trey Lance. I see a guy who has all the skill sets of not a pro-style NFL quarterback. I think Jay's comment was correct. If you're looking for a guy who can steady the ship and be a rookie starter for a team that's going to go 10-6 or 11-5 and make the playoffs, you got it. But if you're looking for a guy who can win you a Super Bowl in 3 to 4 years, I don't think Mac Jones is that guy. Trey Lance could be that guy. And I'm a little surprised the 49ers are drafting on potential, but there's enough of a resume for Lance's few years, again, not counting last year, because last year he played one game, but he played that one game to make sure a lot of people got their scholarships. But the way that he was very impressive in his 2019 season, this is not a bad pick. And I think if you weren't going to go Jones, if we're going to go Lance, I prefer Lance over Jones. I don't think it's his coin flip. I think Lance is the better choice.
I got more, but Ant, go ahead.
Yeah, you know what? I was kind of surprised, but then the more I looked at because we're all watching NFL Network or ESPN's coverage, and one of the things they showed on the network, and it just dawned on me, Kyle Shanahan ran a great offensive scheme with Matt Ryan and Jimmy Garoppolo, but neither of them are dual threat quarterbacks. With Lance, he actually has that, and the thing is, so the one thing you can't knock on Lance is that he's inexperienced. Only 318 pass attempts in his career. He only played in one season, of course. One game he had under his belt last season. But I'll be the strengths off NFL.com. These are some of his strengths. Film junkie with a high football IQ and an NFL frame. I think obviously Shanahan loves a quarterback who can be a bit of a film junkie and stay in the film room and study his opposing team. Passing scheme encourages full field reads. So obviously we talked about Zach Wilson being kind of a 1 week quarterback, Trevor Lawrence as well. Whereas Trey Lance played in an offensive system where he really did have to kind of surveillance the entire field. That's going to help him at least when he's ready to start in the NFL. And that's another strength too. He can sit behind for a year, knowing that the 49ers still have Jimmy Garoppolo for this season coming up. He can study.
Do they know, Anthony? I don't know what they're going to.
For the moment, he's still on the roster. But at the same time, if they keep him, they have the option of holding Garoppolo because he's in the last year of his contract to be a placeholder while Trey Lance gets the nuances in the NFL, gets to be able to adjust to everything. He'll have some preseason, unlike the rookies last year, he'll actually have a couple of preseason games under his belt to kind of adjust to the speed of the National Football League, to kind of adjust the defenses. But yeah, they're going on potential right now. And it's not, like I said, the 49ers, they're not picking for next season much as they're picking for the year after. Because I really don't see them trading Garoppolo unless something literally blow their minds away, like Aaron Rodgers, as we mentioned earlier. But since that trade is not happening, they got Garoppolo, who has playoff experience, playing the Super Bowl. They're going to be healthy this season. One of the biggest Achilles heel last season for 49ers was the fact that they had a lot of injuries, particularly on the defensive side of football. So, like I said, it's a draft of potential. But Trey Lance upside is really high. And when I look at Matt Jones, for as good as he is he good because he's that good, or is he good because of the pro-style offense and the weapons he had in Alabama as well? And we know that the SEC pretty much had a down year this year. They weren't the strongest conference as they have been in years past. Some teams missed games because of COVID. So I think it was a toss-up. You got to decide if you're going to go for the guy who really plays well, but you had to give him some more weapons for him to be as effective as he was in college, or the guy who can maybe sit a year, adjust and adapt, and then you can build you'll have an entire offseason to build an offense around what he does very well instead of
and-
7
and
months.
we
And you
can-
know you
we
have
can
a
dive-
placeholder.
We can talk about this
placeholder.
all day. We can talk
And we
about
can
this all
dive back.
day.
We can circle back on this. when we do
We'll
our
circle
quarterback
back
recap.
to this. We have a lot of time left to go in this show.
Yeah.
However, we have a fourth pick to discuss, and I will talk about it. Let's break it again. Just a warning. I told you this trope happens before, but to say it again, the uncertainty of the draft really begins at number 4 with the Atlanta Falcons. Actually, not really. Some people have said they needed a QB of the future, but they decided to go the logical route over the last few weeks and pick the best player available. And that's why I love tonight. Actual pick. So the Falcons decided to go with Kyle Pitts, tight end, Florida. I think this is the right pick, and I think it's the right pick by a country mile, especially with Trey Lance off the board. Matt Ryan is still 36, so he still can run an NFL offense for a few years. I haven't seen a tight end this good since Travis Kelce. I haven't seen a tight end this good since Gronk. And I think this is exactly the right pick. He has rare athleticism for a player his size. He could be a small athlete with the way he moves on the field. He is 245 pounds, and he is hard to tackle in both ways, bringing him to the ground and actually catching him. He has the skills of basically a wide receiver. The Atlanta Falcons have known how to use tight ends in their scheme before. I know I've seen a lot of good tight ends in this league, but if you're looking for a tight end who basically, in my opinion, goes to the George Kittle level, it's him. He is a unicorn. He is a unicorn on the field. And he went past the wide receivers in this draft, a lot of good ones, for a reason. He led FBS tight ends in receiving TDs. He had 4 TDs in one game last year. I'm not even going to talk about the pro day because no one cares about the pro day on this show, and I'm perfectly fine. His blocking skills are mixed, but you're not getting him for that. You're getting him to be one of the best. I wouldn't even say tight ends. You're getting him to be one of the best pass catchers in the NFL. This is a fantastic pick. If they keep Julio Jones, and I know the Falcons have been rumored to trade Julio Jones on a lot of occasions this year, that kind of been brought up last few weeks. 32, he's getting a little bit older. You get the bang for your buck with him. You have Jones, you have Ridley, you have Pitts. I can't think of a better 2 wide receiver and tight end combo that doesn't play in the state of Missouri, guys.
Yep. Yeah. I'm gonna tell you like this. Pitt's skills definitely put him in the category of Kittle and Kelce. I think of Tony Gonzalez as well. I mean, now now don't get me wrong. I'm not comparing him to the Hall of Famer. I'm just saying his ability to be able to be split out as a wide receiver with that speed and that size. I mean, like I said, Matt Ryan's going to enjoy throwing to him over the middle against a cover 2, and he could definitely. He's a mismatch waiting to happen. I mean, he's too big to cover with a corner. He's certainly too quick, too fast to be for a linebacker to cover him. I mean, like I said, Atlanta's offense, where you just mentioned those weapons, if they hold Julio Jones, if they don't trade him, they're going to be a dangerous, fun team to watch. And you think about the games they gave up last season because they couldn't hold a lead. They're not going to hold a lead with this offense. And I mean, they're going to be a sleeper team in the South.
Anthony, they might score every game. They might win every game 54-51, but guys, if Joe or Jay, you want to get in before we get to the Bengals pick,
Joe,
the
go
right
ahead.
pick by far.
Joe, go ahead.
Oh, he's the number 1 athlete on the team. Again, if there wasn't this quality of quarterback and a need for quarterback at the top, this is the guy that's on the top of everybody's draft board. There was a rumor the other day that said there's really only 20 guys who have first round grades in this entire draft. So he is on the top of everybody's draft board. It's just that there were some needs for some other players, some quarterbacks and some other places. This is an obvious pick. Again, we all thought this about Evan Ingram too. He had the same skill set. We all said, oh, you can't cover him. He's on, the NFL knows what it's doing and coaches know what they're doing. And guys scheme against guys. So I'm not going to put him in the Hall of Fame, as we did with Shockey and all those guys that came out that were so great. But he is definitely the number one athlete on the board, and he deserved to be the number one athlete picked out of the draft.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing that kind of jumps out to me, Rabbi. I mean, this, the scheme that Florida ran, and it helps to have a guy like Kyle Trask throwing you the football, but this is a guy who has the ability to isolate the football. Coverage doesn't bother him. He can disrupt windows. His drops went from 6 in 2019 against 80 targets to 0 in 2020 against 66 targets. This is a guy who turns bad throws into great catches. He's got great burst off his plant foot. He separates easily at the line or at the top of his route. This is a guy who's going to be a monster with yards after the catch with his body type. We talk about, that he's not going to be the greatest blocker in the world, but look, he at least puts out the effort. And when you're a pass catching tight end, the best thing you get, if you give the effort when it's your turn to block, that's kind of all you can ask of him. This is a guy who played, both in the slot and outside, also played, in line against the tackle. This is a guy who's going to be a contributor from day one. And as the line from the Athletics draft guide scouting report on this guy is, he should be evaluated more as a weapon than a traditional tight end. This guy has the potential to be really special.
Yeah, by the way, we're going to get to the Cincinnati Bengals pick in a second, but if you're watching the show, the guy who's sitting in the chair is scary, and I don't want to ever see him ever again. I think he is just a guy who I would never want to mess with, and I have a feeling we're going to be seeing memes of him for a long
Rabbi.
time. Yep, I know. We're
there
getting to that right now. The Cincinnati Bengals are number 5. They did get the QB last year in Joe Burrow, but as those who know, one QB does not a team make. I got that right, guys, right? Okay.
Yes.
That is why the Bengals are picking 5th. Did they get him help to make sure he was going to not be sacked next year? No, they got his old LSU teammate, Jamar Chase, wide receiver. Anthony, this is your pick. They could have gone with Penei Sewell from Oregon, but they decided to go with a very dynamic wide receiver and somebody who didn't play last year, but is considered the most talented wide receiver on this draft. And there's 2 Alabama guys there as well.
Yeah, I actually had Jamar Chase going 6 to Miami, but he's a pick higher than I thought. Look, I thought the Bengals should have went offensive lineman and gotten Sewell. You look at the fact that Joe Burrow was sacked 32 times in 10 games, and when he suffered this injury, he was in the pocket. They're one of the worst rushing offenses in the league. I mean, they had a lot of problems on the offensive line, and I thought Sewell was a guy that can at least help them rebuild our offensive line from scratch. Look, he opted out of last season, but the prior year, 13 games started at left tackle, won the Outland Trophy award, and unanimous All-American, Polynesian College Football Co-Player of the Year. Look, I watched some film on him, and he reminds me of he reminds me of Kevin Mawai, who played for the Jets, particularly with his size and his athleticism. Like, one of the things that stuck out to me was when Oregon ran screens, how quickly he was able to get off his block and to get to that second level to clear some space. And it reminded me of Kevin Mawai quite a bit when the Jets would run those screens to Curtis Martin and Richie Anderson back in the day. Look, I just feel like the Bengals went for the wide receiver. They're trying to build their team from the outside in. I'm a Bill Parcells, kind of an old school guy. You build your team from the inside out. I really think Cincinnati kind of dropped the ball on this one because that offensive line it needs some help. And I don't care how many weapons you get a guy as far as receivers and tight ends and running backs. You can't protect your quarterback. He's not going to get the ball downfield much.
Oh yeah, absolutely, guys. Jay, I love Chase, but I'm biased. You know me.
Yeah, look, I know you are because of it's LSU, but Rabbi, when you and I talked, when we were first putting the show together, and we talked about the Bengals were the one where we thought there was no way to go wrong here, whether it was Sewell or Jamar Chase at wide receiver. And I like, to me, if you want to give a quarterback as much as you want to give him protection, this offensive line, there's enough depth in this draft that they can pick up a future blindside protector for him in the second round. I love this pick. This guy is the hands down, far and away, the best wide receiver in the draft, and that's saying something based on Alabama guys. That's just my look. This is a guy who can line up both inside and outside. He knows how to slip the jam. He the great hand-eye coordination. He fights off aggressive coverage. He knows how to go get the ball. He believes that every ball that goes up in the air, anywhere near him, is my ball. And that's, you want a guy who's got that attitude to consistently win at the catch point. He's good with his in and out of his routes. Be nice if he needs to make every route looks the same coming off the line of scrimmage, so cornerbacks can't get any intel on which way he's going. But I mean, this is a guy who creates separation, gear changing acceleration, and he's an elite finisher with great physical ball skills. That, this guy's a wide receiver 1, and he comes in already having existing chemistry with one of the best young quarterbacks in the game. Applaud this pick.
Oh, absolutely, Joe.
Yeah, great pick. It's funny when we do all these analysis, they're going to play football for more than 1 year down in Cincinnati. So they don't have to get, we're always going, get the offensive lineman to protect him. When you get a guy like this available to you, who's already played with your quarterback, who's very, very good, who's coachable, I'm sure he's going to be able to learn all the little nuances that he has to for the NFL. You take him. You don't look at it and go, oh, we should have protected our quarterback, and then he still has nobody to throw the ball to. Again, this is a building process. This isn't a 1 year, this is the only guy we're ever going to pick again. So they can get some offensive linemen later on in the draft, and then if that's the need next year, you take 2 or 3 of them. You have to take a guy this talented and this good and this pro ready from a program like LSU and plug them in there and let them play together for a couple of years. Again, they're not winning the Super Bowl next year. So let's put them in there and get them working together and build a team.
We'll have our old friend Issa Petrilli in here for pick number 6 in just a second. I have to say, though, considering the talent that Jamar Chase had in his national championship season of 2019, one thing that surprised me a little bit, and we're going to learn this if Rashad Bateman gets picked anytime tonight, I might want to bring it up, is the fact that a lot of people who didn't play this year kind of got penalized a little bit by GMs and coaches because it wasn't the game or it wasn't the right thing to do. And Trey Lance, that's a different story. His team had this whole season canceled and he couldn't really play.
Quarterbacks, Rabbi. It really is.
Quarterbacks too, but you have to think about running backs who got that situation. And that's also one of the reasons why there's very few linebackers who are projected to go this high.
If you're a running back and you opted out, you've got less mileage on you, which makes you even more attractive to NFL teams.
That's true, but unfortunately, sometimes GMs don't see it that way, and unfortunately, that's the way everything goes as we see
looky here. The first Alabama receiver is off the board, and as expected, Rabbi, and I'm not surprised by this, Waddle getting picked before Smith. I'm not surprised by this at all.
This move was going to be, before we get to obviously our guest, this move was going to be Smith or Waddle. Smith's measurables, as Jay argued, kind of dropped him a little bit. I don't agree with it either. And I think that was the middle prevailing opinion. By the way, this draft has kind of gone to form so far. And so we're really waiting for the next shoe to drop. Waddle is a superstar in the making. I think he can make plays that Smith can't. I think the familiarity with Tua will help a little bit. If we were talking about if we're talking about how Matt Jones
put it in
as a quarterback, really I think that's going to be a big thing. We now see that with 5 and 6 on the board. Alabama is just a stud machine, and I think Waddle can do a lot of things too. Waddle can run, and Waddle can actually run routes. We now welcome our world's favorite Dolphin superfan, Miss Nisa Petrilli, live from New York this year, not Maryland. So we're good to see you back in the tri-state area. Good evening, Nisa.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, what's going on?
How's it going?
It's going. So we like this pick. What do you think?
Okay, so I like the pick, and I knew that they were going to go for an offensive weapon, which is what they needed to do. So I'm happy about that. I really thought it was going to be Devonta Smith, so I'm a little surprised, but not, unpleasantly surprised. I think either way would have been fine. Obviously, on my wish list was Kyle Pitts or Jamar Chase, but they were not there anymore in terms of offensive weapons. But I'm happy with this. I think this was good. I thought Devonta Smith had a little bit of an edge in their preference, so I'm a little bit surprised, but I think it'll be good.
Yeah, we talked about this before the show when we were talking about which one would go first, Waddle or Smith. And I made the comment, and it's an ongoing pet peeve of mine, is that people seem to get hung up on a guy's measurables instead of on his film. Because on film, I mean, hands down, we saw what Smith did last year, but there's a lot of people who just look at the combination of Waddle's skill set coupled with his measurables, and there are people who are felt he was going to go off the board first.
Yeah, I mean, I see the arguments both ways, and I really actually think that either one would have been fine, and I think Tua would be happy either way. So, a weapon for Tua is much needed for the offense. So.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about this with the Bengals on the previous pick, Nisa, about a college quarterback getting reunited with his favorite target from their playing days together, and we talk about this all the time about a quarterback building chemistry with his number one wide receiver. With guys who never played together, it may sometimes take 2-3 years to kind of get that, almost brain sharage, if you will, with that. But I mean, you like to see Tua's in a situation now where he gets a guy who he's already got that connection with. And I think that's something we should not underestimate.
I agree. And for a second, I was like, are they going to take Justin Fields? For a second, I thought maybe, but I mean, now Tua needs a little bit of time, and I think they made the right decision.
Nisa, we haven't talked to you since the trade of that number 3 pick, which was just a steal that they got from Houston way back in the day for the Laramie Tunsil trade. Did you like them trading back and trading up to this pick?
I think so. I think, yes, it was a good idea because I like that they traded down because they didn't really need the number 3. So I think it was a smart move. And then I don't know if these 2 wide receivers, either Waddle or Smith, would have been available all the way down at 12. So I think this was the right thing for them to do.
Before we get into the draft, before we get into the draft strategy, and Anthony, don't worry, this was probably a bad joke. Nisa, are you shocked that you're happy about 2 Alabama players going to the Miami Dolphins in consecutive years with that number?
Very shocked that I have to root for them, but they're on my team. What am I going to do?
Hey, niece, look at it this way. At least you don't have to root for Buckeyes.
Yeah. I've had to do that in the past, and that was not good.
We both have. So, Rabbi, go ahead. Set her up for the 18th pick.
Yeah, let's talk about that, Nisa. You have the 18th pick coming up in this draft. It's very rare to get 2 top 20 first-round picks in the NFL draft. Where do you think the Dolphins' needs are next with that 18th pick?
I do think that they need to address the defense, and definitely I think a defensive end would be the best choice at number 18. So I think there's a few different options depending on who's available. There's Jalen Phillips from the U that I personally would think would be awesome if he's available, because they rarely ever take anyone from the U, even though it's in their own backyard. But there's also Kwity Paye from Michigan, Azeez Ujulari from Georgia, and Gregory Rousseau also from Miami. So I think
before we let you go, Nisa, and we'll have Anthony's thoughts on that Waddle pick also in just a second. Jay, you are barred from doing this, considering you are a USC fan.
I know, but I have to do
it. Only one person
Come on.
I can do it.
Show. You can do it. Any thoughts about, before we let you go, Nisa, any thoughts about what you've seen so far? It's been pretty almost even Steven, pardon the pun, in this draft so far. Nothing really surprising, nothing really shocking. You see that this seems like a pretty steady draft so far.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it was interesting to see 3 quarterbacks go 1, 2, 3, because that's been so rare that that's happened. And I was a little surprised at the 49ers, but I get it because they want the long-term, quarterback, since they have Garoppolo, and obviously he, is their guy for now. So I do like that pick for them. So I was a little surprised by that, but because I thought they may take Justin Fields, but I think it all made sense so far. No jaws dropping yet. So.
All right,
And
Nisa.
I got to agree with her, but then again, when do I not disagree with my best friend? So.
Okay, so we can get some disagreement on the show, Nisa. We're going to let you go and enjoy the rest of your night. Thank you for giving us some little Dolphins insight. I don't have to do research for it. It's perfect that we can get more fans on here. We'll see you again in the very near future, maybe in a studio somehow. I've heard the city is opening up again. It's a shocking thing.
We shall see, but thanks guys for having me.
Nephew.
Will do. Thanks for having me. Good night.
All right, enjoy the draft.
Take care.
Right.
Happy draft.
Before we get to the Jets draft plan, Anthony, you were talking about Jalen Waddle. I wanted you to kind of get that out before we continued.
No, I'm gonna piggyback on what Nisa said. I mean, look, you could go wrong with either Alabama wide receiver. I mean, that place has been just a wide receiver factory when you think about Jones and Ridley and Cooper. Like these guys really know how to turn out some wide receivers. But think about like with Waddle, I kind of figured he'd go first before Devontae Smith because I really feel like a lot of teams, because of the size factor, may have got turned off by Smith. But look, Tua, I think it's gonna be a great quarterback. He can develop, but you gotta give him some weapons. They were able to sign Will Fuller. But to get Waddle, to get him a guy that he's familiar with, going back to the national championship game, remember, those days and how big a part that Waddle played 2 years ago, even last season, missed some games for his injury. Absolutely had a monster game in the SEC championship game. And look, this is a great pick for Miami.
Yep, it absolutely is.
Rabbi, I kind of can't argue with that. And the extra thing that this guy brings is, his additional value as a kick returner. This is a guy who averaged 19.3 yards per punt return and almost 27 yards per kick return. Total of 3 touchdowns and special teams. So I think automatically, even if he needs a little time to adapt to the offensive scheme in Miami, I think he's going to make an immediate contribution in special teams. But this is a guy who can take the top off of defense, and there's no doubt about it. Almost 19 yards a catch for his career. That's second best in school history, behind a guy who's running the show over in Baltimore, and that's Ozzie Newsome, who averaged over 20. He needs to improve his route running a little bit. But this is a guy who's dangerous before and after the catch. He's got good separation skills. He's going to stress a defense in different ways. 4 catches of 75 plus yards in his career. So, you're going to have to game plan for him because he's going to be a home run threat. I think the comparison to Tyreek Hill is spot on. I think he played in a really good pass friendly scheme. And Anthony's right. I mean, you never would have thought this about a Nick Saban, run program a few years back. They are really producing NFL caliber wide receivers who can step in on day one and be a guy who can make plays. Joe, I don't think you and I would have seen that coming back in the earlier days of Saban's reign in Tuscaloosa.
No, that was the last place you wanted to go for wide receivers years ago. But like you said, they played pro football in Alabama. So these guys are all good. These guys are all top picks. Every one of them is a good choice. 2 really good picks 2 years in a row by the Dolphins to build that team back up from where they were, to try to compete in what is now a pretty even AFC East with Tom Brady gone and, all these young guys coming up and building up. So I think they're on the right path. And again, to get somebody that he's, to go back to the Miami pick, to pick somebody that, again, he's a little bit, he knows, it helps to have somebody that you've worked with before. Just that little look, that you can give each other in practice in different things to look across and know what the guy's going to do is invaluable, especially with a quarterback who's still learning the system too.
Yeah,
Okay,
what?
Guys, we need to move on.
Yes, we do.
Because I would like to at least. So note, if the Giants make their pick before this segment is over, I will break in and we will get to that Giants pick and then we'll move back to this. But guys, we're going to be on the air enough with the Jets pick at number 23. We'll talk about that later. but I want to look into the future. Close your eyes and stay at MetLife Stadium, and there's more green around. The Jets' day 2 of this draft includes the regular second-round pick at number 34 and 2 third-round picks. Jets have a ton of picks in day 3, 5 of them. So with all those picks, those should become players. No, not numbers, not compensatory. They're actual players who will play on Sundays. Guys, give me somebody who they should take in the course of this next 48 hours, starting with Mr. Strait.
You know what? I would say I would go with AC Ojulari. I feel like the Jets need an edge rusher. I don't think it's a need at 23, but I think they could definitely get one in the second round. And you know, the edge rusher out of Georgia, he led Georgia 5.5 sacks in 2019. Co-winner the most improved defensive player. Garnered second team All SEC honors last season and had 12.5 tackles for loss among 31 total tackles. Tied for 8th in the FBS with 8.5 sacks. Tied for second with forced fumbles in 10 starts. Look, he's a great build, humble teammate. He's aggressive, got aggressive play demeanor, which we saw last year with the Jets between Adam Gase and everything that was going on in that locker room. Aggressiveness was solely lacking in that locker room from top to bottom. He'll be a great change of pace. Lightly quick, playing off the blocks, very athletic guy, and a guy who can definitely stop the run. So any help that the Jets can have as far as being able to get to the quarterback, to pressure a quarterback into making a mistake, even taking a sack, because nobody's downfield. That guy who can help out plug the holes in those A gaps and stop the run. That'd be a great addition for the Jets. And we saw with Robert Saleh and his defense when they're fully healthy and they had the Bosa's and all the world able to be a dual threat. They need that right now. I feel like they can definitely get them one with later on in the draft.
Yeah, I completely agree. Jay, what do you think?
I mean, look, we all know that offensive line is still a big need for the Jets. Joe Douglas has freely admitted that he needs to augment that unit. So the guy that I'm looking at, and he should be available round 2, round 3, is Brady Christensen, who was Zach Wilson's blindside protector at BYU. There are people who went out to Provo and saw Zach Wilson's pro day, and they got a chance to get another look at Christensen. So there are a lot of people who think he's moved up on some draft boards because he had a really good pro day. He played really well this year. There's some scouts who think that he's more destined to play guard in the NFL, especially in a zone run type of offense. And potential starter here. He's got good feet and pass protection. Routinely executes blocks on the perimeter downfield. He's solid in his ability to redirect and keep rushers occupied. Grapples well. He's physical. The guy didn't lose a game to injury. 38 straight games at left tackle over his career. Look, does he have shorter than ideal arms? What you want for a prototypical left tackle? Yeah, he's occasionally late with his punch. Long arm rushers have been known to give him a little bit of trouble, and can be a little bit late adjusting to inside moves. You'd like him to see a little more pop in his hands in the run game against defenders. So here's the thing. He only played left tackle in college, so he doesn't really have a lot of experience in other positions. And he didn't really face a lot of top tier pass rushers this past year. But, this is a guy who's been a consensus All-American. He's good at, maintaining his blocks. He moves well with his feet. I think this is a guy who needs to clean up his timing a bit. He's got good quickness, good flexibility, and pass protection, and he gets the job done as a run blocker. So whether the Jets give him a look at left tackle because that's where he's comfortable, or they spend the next year, converting him into, let's say, a left guard playing alongside Becton. I think if that's the worst case scenario where that works out, I think you've got a good left side if these guys develop as people think, to keep elite pass rushers off of Zach Wilson's blind side, for the next few years.
I like how we're having a lot of this college reunion stuff tonight because it seems to be a theme. I'm just going to go with a different theme for the next few rounds, and that's going to be sons of famous players, because I think the Jets need cornerback help, and I think somebody who falls right into that 34 position is Asante Samuel Jr. from Florida State. You know him as, of course, the son of Asante Samuel, who led the league in interceptions in 2006 and 2009. Samuel is one of those opt-out guys but he did play 8 games. He has a short 5'1" frame, but his athleticism is amazing. He has movement skills. He can keep up with a lot of the top wide receivers in the NFL. I don't think he'll be a one-on-one match person to begin with, but I think he can definitely cover your number 2 pretty easy. He can become an interception machine. Only had 4 interceptions in college, but he had 9 passes defended in 18, 15 and 19, and 9 again in 20. I think he is also somebody who was a team captain as a junior. He is competitive. I know that's usually something that no one actually thinks is amazing, but he has somebody who can be a dog out there for the New York Jets. I don't think, like I said, he needs to have a lot more bulk, I think, but the athleticism comes in the fact that he is a speedy 5'1", 180. And when the ball is in the air, he just needs to be a better finisher. I think he is one of the top 5 cornerbacks in this draft, and you can get him in the 2nd round. Joe, who do you think the Jets should pick?
Well, assuming they take a running back at 23, because I think that's the right way to go there, I'm going to say to continue to build some weapons for this brand new quarterback that you brought in that you want to be successful. And whether it's Jay's answer to go offensive line or you go get some wide receivers, would certainly be nice to get some wide receivers for a brand new quarterback, especially when you look at their roster. You know, they let everybody go the last 2 years. They have nobody. Let Perriman go this year. They really don't have any weapons at all. You don't have a tight end to throw to. You don't have that security blanket on this team, on this roster at this point. So hopefully you go get somebody, either a big tight end or you get a big wide receiver, somebody who he can look for in some tough matchups on 3rd downs. And when he's under this pressure that we're talking about, that he may not be great at yet, we need to have a security blanket for him. So we're going to need to build on their offense. You know, the defense is not very good either, but when you're starting from nothing, build around what you just got. So hopefully, again, they take running back at 23, and then they start to get some more offensive weapons. Offensive line can be taken 3rd, 4th, 5th round, and still build some depth there, which is what they're going to need. And they're not winning next year. So let's build a team from within, build a team around somebody, and make this last for a while instead of hey, let's make a big splash for 2 years and then get rid of everybody again. Because if you go back to their last 8 first-round picks, they've all been traded away from the team. So I'm guessing Zach Wilson is going to stay. So let's go ahead and
maybe.
Let's
maybe. Who the hell knows at this point with this team?
Rabbi, you look at it. I mean, there's plenty of wide. This is as much as this is a deep offensive line draft. This is a pretty deep wide receiver draft. And you got to figure there are going to be guys like Elijah Moore out of Ole Miss, like one of your other LSU guys, Terrace Marshall. A guy that I saw play a lot, which is Amon-Ra St. Brown at USC, Nico Collins at Michigan. So there's definitely going to be guys who are going to be available in the 2nd and 3rd round, where the Jets can actually try and get some players to give Zach Wilson some more weapons on the perimeter. It will be interesting to see, Joe, if they do go with a running back at 23.
We'll talk about that running back coming up. We have our own segment to go for that Jets pick about who we think they should take. I want to build on that wide receiver for a second. This is one of the best wide receiver drafts I've ever seen. 12 people in the Athletics draft guide have a 2nd round grade or a 2nd to 3rd round grade. I think, and the name I'm looking at, I love Amari St. Brown. I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. I got him confused because Amari Rogers from Clemson is just another small, bulky wide receiver who I would love to see in a good offense. And yes, obviously I also would love to see Terrace Marshall Jr. in offense. I think he's going to take a little more time to develop And I'm going to talk about Elijah Moore a little bit later on, but
Just-
there's no shortage of good wide receivers in this draft. I think you have maybe 5 to 6 all pros coming from this draft. That's just my opinion. And of course, we're talking out of our ass at times because we don't know what the hell is going to happen when we look at this footage a year from now. And I don't want to look at any other footage that we've had a year from now because I'm sure we were wrong about so many things.
Yeah, but that's what makes tonight so much fun. We're going by by information. There's a lot out there. We're going by guesses, educated ones, I would say, and we're making predictions. Of course, the teams that are drafting these players don't exactly know what's going to happen in a year or two or not. And I think that's what I said. That's what make this night so much fun. It's anticipating what can be and hoping that the opposite doesn't happen with some of these players.
And just what I was going to say before this pick came in was, this is the biggest pick of the night for the Giants. Of what did Denver do? Did Denver go quarterback and leave these other 2 guys on the board? Because now you got the Cowboys looking at, they probably wanted Surtain and Horn is gone. So now where do they go?
We'll talk about the rest of the top 10 for a second, but I kind of want to get back into that. Dallas is an interesting conundrum here because they need to go defense, and the only 2 guys who were worth this pick on defense are gone. Micah Parsons is a good name, but he's not someone who fits in Dallas's system, and that really is the only guy left. It'll be interesting to see, and again, we'll talk about it in a little bit, if somebody like Dallas decides, oh God, if Devontae Smith is a good pick for this team, and that will put the Giants in, God knows, a tailspin. I think the Dallas Cowboys got screwed over here big time. They did not expect cornerbacks to go 8-9.
Yeah, I think if Smith goes to Dallas, then the trade happens with New England and the Giants move back.
I thought this would be the great time for New England to make the trade up.
Yeah.
But now you realize New England might not have to do anything to get Fields or Jones, and they don't have to give up any draft capital. And we know how Bill Belichick loves that draft capital to go trade back in.
Yeah, but you can't take that chance if that's the guy you want. You got to get him.
True. And I know we've talked about this throughout the years. Jay, you talked about it. Joe, you talked about it, especially when the Giants went up to get Daniel Jones at number 6. You have a name on your board. You want to go for them. However, I don't know if the New England Patriots thought Mac Jones would be here, and maybe they're trying to start thinking in your head, could this be the guy that fits our system? You said it before, Jay. Mac Jones is ready to compete in a pro-style offense, and New England gives them that. No?
Yeah, and here's the interesting thing, and this is what's interesting here, is that if you look who else is on the clock, you've got Dallas, you've got the Giants, the Eagles, the Chargers, the Vikings. None of those teams are really in the market for a quarterback, unless the Eagles decide to do something completely off script, though we all know there's no actual script in the NFL draft.
There's no actual script for Philly this offseason, so who the hell knows?
And that's the thing. I mean, when you look at it, the Giants would be, I think it would make sense, and I agree with Joe, if you were, and Rabbi, you and I, when we were talking in the production meeting earlier this week, we both thought the Giants were going to go cornerback at 11, though with 2 different guys. You were looking at J.C. Horn, and I was looking at Surtain. We figured one of them might be off the board at that point because one might go to the Cowboys at 10. We did not see both of them being off the board this early. So if I'm the Giants, Joe, I agree with you. I think you look to trade back, get some more draft capital, either for this year or next. And I think that the Patriots make a good trade partner, swap spots and see what you can get out of here.
Well, look at Jay, before we talk again.
Dallas is making a trade right now.
Dallas is trading that pick. It's trading it to the Eagles.
They're flipping.
Really?
I'm curious what this is going to be here. So
They're
the Eagles are. I have a feeling the Giants are about to get screwed big time over here.
Yeah, they're going to take Smith.
They're going to take Smith. I think it's pretty obvious. But let's get back into this a little bit here. Giants pick is coming up at 11. First of all, what the hell inter-division trading to get a player over
Yeah,
division.
that's
That is
kind of strange.
ridiculously interesting. I think
Yeah.
Dallas was in a good position here, and they took it. This might be a second first-round pick for Philly. I don't see Philly at 12. Do they have 2 first-round picks here? Ooh, I need to let's look this up. But I think
we do need to look at that.
we'll look it up. But I think this is
the
very
answer to your question is no, Rabbi. They do not. But Rabbi, while we wait to see how this plays out, I kind of want to circle back to something. The Detroit Lions, who have had an inconsistent history with, hitting and missing on their number 1 picks. I like the pick of Sewell at offensive tackle. You change quarterbacks, you bring in Goff, and I think the best way to give a quarterback whose mental state may not be at the great and confidence may not be at the greatest level coming off the season he had and the way he was thrown under the bus by his former coach, bringing in the best offensive tackle in the draft to protect your blind side. I really like the move by the Lions.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think there's Sewell and then the rest of the offensive tackles.
Yeah.
It may not be that much, but Sewell is a franchise offensive tackle. I think it could have been a good pick for Miami at 6. I understand why they wanted to get to another weapon, and I think when Mike Gesicki was your best weapon last year in the red zone, I think this is pretty much a easy choice to do. But I love Sewell at 7. I love the way that they're going to build this team up. I think the Lions need to find a way to get more than the 6 picks that they have now. But I like the pick. I really do.
Yeah, and you know what? I won't be surprised if the Eagles jumped up here to get Devonta Smith. Wide receiver is in need for this team, as we know. So I'm not going to be surprised by this. But I'll tell you what, if the Giants don't trade back, I think it's a mistake because I'm not sure, which way you go here. I mean, look, they've got plenty of needs, but I don't know. The best offensive lineman, the next up that's available is Slater out of Northwestern, and I don't know that he fits. If you're going that way with him, it'll be interesting. Could they go linebacker? I mean, sure. Look, Patrick Graham needs as much weapons on defense as Daniel Jones does on offense. So, could they go with the kid out of Penn State at linebacker? It'll be interesting. They have options, though. I don't think they're probably looking a little further down their draft board than they originally thought they would have to here at 11. What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I don't understand the Cowboys trading with a team that's going to beat you in your own division. It doesn't make.
There's a reason for that. I don't think they think the Eagles are a threat right now. And once Surtain was taken off of the board at number 9, they wanted to justify getting a better defensive player for the right position. And I again, we'll talk about the Giants in a second, but you need to find a player to dance with before trading down. You can make calls to everybody, and they may not say yes. So,
but I tell you this though.
Let's see if we actually pick the right guy.
Yeah, that'll be interesting. But I'll tell you what, Rabbi, under normal circumstances, I agree with you in terms of trading partner. But when you consider the relationship between Joe Judge and Bill Belichick, it will not surprise me in the least if the Giants work out a trade to swap spots with New England.
Well, we'll see what happens. We'll talk about that in a second. But this Eagles pick is a very interesting pick. It's the first real intrigue of the draft, I think. Again, you guys are saying New England's trading up. They don't have to trade up.
No, they don't.
You have the Giants. You have the Giants. You have Dallas, who just signed a quarterback to their future deal. You have the Chargers, who just basically had one of the best rookie seasons in history from Justin Herbert. And the Vikings just extended Kirk Cousins. So unless somebody is jumping up, you can't trade with New England.
Right. The only reason I can think that New England would want to trade up, is if you look at who's behind them. The next team up that might even be remotely looking at a quarterback. I mean, you've got Washington at 19 and Chicago at 20, who could conceivably be in the market to
They
draft.
may not even have to trade up either. That's the
Well,
funny
that's
thing
the
about
thing.
this.
It'll be interesting to see
This is
because
very
look,
interesting.
if the only reason I would think they would do it is if they hear rumblings, that let's say Washington and Chicago are looking to trade up. Let's say,
Yep,
with
and the
Chargers
Giants
or the
and the Eagles did take Devontae Smith,
It's
wide
not a
receiver out of
surprise.
Alabama. So here
It's
we
not a
go, guys.
So you,
All of our picks now for number 11 that
So-
we predicted are off of the board. So
That's right.
let's
So you
think of some
lost
good
the-
readjusting here.
so you lost a game on purpose to get the number 8 pick. Then you traded down to number 12, and then you traded back up to number 10.
They screwed the Giants in many ways over
I
here
know,
because
But they also lost 2 draft picks on the way.
they did, but they just screwed the Giants multiple ways here because
Yeah.
the Giants' two biggest needs or two biggest positions of strength were wide receiver and cornerback. They don't need the 2 quarterbacks because they thought one of them would be taken at this point.
Well,
Neither are.
That's why I said Denver was the key to this whole draft, because
You're right.
if they don't pick, if they pick the quarterback, then everything falls the way you want it. Also, Carolina was the one they thought was going to take a quarterback, because going into playing in the South with Sam Darnold's just a bad mistake, and trading away Bridgewater. So, those are the 2 guys that you wonder what they're thinking, but that's how this thing goes. So,
Well,
So-
here's the thing, Joe. When you talk about Carolina, I'm not surprised that they didn't take a quarterback. I think the reason they got rid of Bridgewater is to just show everybody that, right or wrong, and I know how you feel about him, that they're all in on Darnold, that he is the guy for them from day one. And the Broncos getting Bridgewater kind of took them out of the quarterback market. So it's not surprising that that they looked on the other. Both of those teams looked on the other side of the ball.
but I think Jay, neither one of those guys are long-term answers, and so
100%.
why not
100%,
take somebody
maybe.
like you always say? Why not take somebody who could sit behind a Teddy Bridgewater for a year and learn? Why not pick somebody who could sit behind Sam Darnold and see how lazy he is and say, I don't want to be that guy, and learn from him
So
instead
you're
of.
meaning you're going to take somebody and learn how not to be a quarterback from
Yeah.
Sam Darnold.
Look,
Okay.
good.
Hey,
Look,
I've told
let's
people for
be
years,
fair.
you can learn how to do something or how
One
not
way
to
or
do
another.
something.
Maybe. Look, and for all we know, and I've said this before,
Hey, trade,
is it happening?
Is there
Chicago.
another trade?
Chicago.
Oh,
And this is the
hello.
thing. I'll tell you what, if Chicago's moving up right now,
They're taking a quarterback.
they're
They're
looking for
probably-
a quarterback.
The question is, are they going to go for Jones or are they going to go for Fields?
Well,
That's a very interesting. First of all, let me think about this. This is good for the Giants. I did not think. I think there were so many suitors. You mentioned Washington. I don't know. I don't know if we mentioned Chicago, but I
Yeah.
think Washington
Yeah, I
and
did.
Chicago just got that hallelujah moment. We could get somebody here. I think a lot of people thought somebody would take one of these quarterbacks in this next few picks. And now, since we are now going to have to adjust this little draft board and we don't have to talk about the Giants pick right now, let's get to what the Giants are going to be doing in the future, as they have not as much draft capital, but I will look and see what they're going to get in this trade in just a moment. But the New York Football Giants rebuild has been steady. For the first time in a while, they're not picking in the single digits. Hallelujah, praise the Lord, and we're almost at the 20 spot now. Anyway, the 11 pick can go many different ways. Offensive skill positions, defensive depth building, corridor, never mind. The Giants definitely do not need to pick a signal caller. So let's talk about what they're going to be doing. They have picks in day 2, round 2, and 3, one each. They have 3 picks combined in round 4 and 6, and round 5 or 7, the Giants are just not emotionally attached to you this year. Sorry. So let's role play as Dave Gettleman, yell at some reporters, forget how to use technology, and predict the rest of this draft, Joe.
Well, they just got a 5th round pick, next year's 1st round pick, and next year's 4th round pick.
Wow.
Wow.
Just the
That's
20
awesome.
Rabbi,
Good job.
we can get into who we think the Giants should take, subsequent to round 1. But I will say this is a hell of a deal by Gettleman, that's excellent draft capital. And for the Bears to give up that much, I have to believe the only reason
They're going Mac Jones. They're going Mac Jones.
Whoever
You know what?
they're going quarterback. Whether it's
Of course
Fields,
they are.
whether
Hold on,
it's Jones, they're going quarterback.
You know
Of course
what?
they are.
Dave
Anthony?
Dave Kaplan is having one hell of an offseason. You saw about the signings, and now this much draft capital for one pick. You know what? I know we've been beating up Dave Kaplan in the last few years, but I got to give it to him for this offseason, though. He's done a really good job.
Number one pick could be a top 10 pick with Chicago.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, especially because of the fact that you're going to if you're putting Fields in there, you're going to be struggling. If you're putting someone like Mac Jones in there, yeah, you have a better chance, but you're still probably going to be picking you're not going to be picking any higher than 15. You're not going to tell me that unless the Packers lose Aaron Rodgers, that the Bears aren't going to be the first or second best team in the NFC North. I love this trade. Okay. Back to what we were talking about here. We're going to go backwards and talk about what the Giants should do in later drafts. Joe, what's your opinion as we look at
well, so now they have the 20th pick in this round, and they picked up that draft pick that they were missing. But as to Anthony's point, they were talking the other day to Gettleman, and somebody said, oh, you only have 6 picks and you don't have any in the later rounds. And he said, well, our 5th round pick is Leonard Williams. So that worked out pretty well. And our 7th round pick was Yadam, who they traded from Denver, and he's on the roster and he's playing cornerback for them. So he had 2 already NFL players that were much better than any guy you were going to pick in the 5th or 7th round this year. So again, to Anthony's point, he's made some really nice moves this year. They may have mortgaged the future a little bit with some of the money, but they have this new thing with these voidable years and all this stuff that they figured out how to extend people. The NFL guys aren't stupid. They know their way around these contracts and they know how to do it. So I think you're going to get offensive linemen. I think you're going to get linebackers. I think you're going to build all of those hogs that he likes. He talked about having linebackers this year. He talked about it the other day and said, we need guys who can play 3 downs. We need guys who can play in different positions. We need the Julian Loves of the world who can play safety, corner, slot, and blitz and play on special teams. So he's building around Joe. We talked about this last year, guys. He's building around Joe Judge. They're not building around Daniel Jones. They're not building around Blake Martinez. They're building around Joe Judge and Patrick Graham. And this is what they want is versatile guys, high character guys that want to work. And he said, I want to be around what Kyle Rudolph said. Joe Judge said, I want guys that want to win every day and want to be the best that they can be. So they obviously have their eye on somebody here. Now that it's down to 20, Jay, or 22, I would
19.
say
19, I believe.
The kid from, no, I don't think it was. I think it was 20.
Oh, the 19. Okay.
Penn State makes a lot more sense now at 20 than he did at 11.
Yeah, 100%.
Or one of these edge guys, as you call them. I still call them outside linebackers. You still can now get an edge guy who you weren't going to take an edge guy at 11. That's way too high for a 3rd down player. But now,
and I think I got to agree with you, Joe and Anthony. I think now that they've fallen further down, I think the guy that you were looking at for them to take potentially, as maybe in the top half of the 2nd round, I think he now becomes an option.
And by the way, it is Fields that they picked, not Mac Jones. So Justin Fields is the Bears' new quarterback. We'll get to that in a little bit.
The guy that you were looking at for them, who as a later round pick, now I think becomes a viable option with this pick, with the first round pick being later down. So go ahead and talk about the guy that you were looking at for them in a subsequent pick, but I think is now more viable here.
Yeah, well, I was looking at Vonnie Perkins, the guy from Oklahoma, the edge rusher. I looked at the Giants. I was thinking about Patrick Graham's defense and what he loves to do. He loves to move guys around. He loves to shift between 3-4 to 4-3. He loves to, like I said, he loves to keep the opposing offenses guessing. And when you have guys who can kind of be interchangeable, and also not to mention, you never have enough pass rushers on an NFL team. We saw the Tampa Bay Buccaneers prove how you can have an abundance of pass rushers who can come in, be fresh, still got to the quarterback, and just rotate them around. And I feel like Perkins is a guy that fits into Patrick Graham's defense. Signing Leonard Williams is a big deal because he's a pass rusher who's a defensive tackle who can plug up the middle and can be moved around. Perkins is the same guy. You can rush him outside the edge. You can move him inside. Think about this. He was suspended for 5 games that carried over into last season and still was second team all conference with 5.5 sacks in just 6 games. That tells you how pretty dynamic he can be with the right system. And if you let him loose, like I said, Patrick Graham, the Giants, when they signed Leonard Williams, edge rusher went from a necessity to a luxury if you have that kind of defense. And like Joe said, he's built around Joe Judge coaching the philosophy, the mentality. And that's why I said why the Giants, they got like the mentality of Joe Judge set in halfway through the season. You saw that defense flying around. Look at the Seattle game. Has a prime example of how good that defense was and shutting down Russell Wilson and that high-power offense. And they basically took away Metcalf in that game. He had 3 catches. He had a touchdown, but it was late in the game, and they just did a phenomenal job. And I feel like Perkins will really fit this defensive scheme. I think he'll be a great help. And Leonard Williams is going to get some double teams next season. We see that now. And you can get somebody who can win that one-on-one battle on the outside. Like move him inside, has a 4-3 lineman to a tackle to stop the run. He's still got the speed and athleticism for it. He has the power to use that bull rush to get through, to shed a tackle. I think he'll be a great pick. But like I said, with the Giants getting additional picks, moving down, he becomes an option up there along with Parsons from Penn State because they're both interchangeable guys. So it's going to be very interesting what the Giants do.
Yeah, and Anthony, I got to tell you, I mean, I agree with you that they, in second and third rounds, I think they need to go edge or they need to go pass rusher, whether it's, a guy who's going to be a 4-3 down defensive end or an outside linebacker. And the guy I'm looking at is Carlos Basham Jr. out of Wake Forest, who should be available at number 42. This one scout kind of pegged him this way, quote, he's the most natural pass rusher in the draft. He's underproduced for his skill level, which certainly is a concern. The competitive nature of the player needs to improve to maximize his potential. His level of talent is up there with the better guys in the draft. Another one said he's interesting because he can play both spots, meaning an inside rusher as a DT and an outside rusher as a DE. And he probably can be an inside, he can step in as an inside sub rusher. Giants need, we all know how much help the Giants need at pass rush. This is a guy who, good footwork, great straight line explosion, knows how to widen, his stance outside to create an inside lane. Is good at maintaining his balance at contact, natural force, works his way through bodies. His hand technique has improved each season. He's a very aware player. He's got good reaction skills, ability to close down run lanes. Chases the ball up and down the line of scrimmage. He's got a good motor when he is engaged, and that's the question about him. How engaged is he? So what is it, 33.5 tackles for loss over 33 games in 3 seasons at Wake. He can be a little inefficient with his pass rush plan. Sometimes he wastes moves, doesn't necessarily have a lot of counters at the moment. So the question is like, he may need to be coached up a little bit, but I think this is a guy who can definitely fit in bare minimum as a substitute, in some type of rotation. This is a guy who between October of 2018 and October of 2020 recorded at least 1 tackle for loss in 23 straight games. This is a guy who has active play. He's got power. He's got hustle. Look, does he need to become more creative as a pass rusher? Sure, but a lot of guys can get by on their speed or their quickness or their athletic ability to get to the quarterback at the college level. It's in the NFL where they start to learn those counters and additional moves. But this is a guy who has his size, explosiveness, and his effort are above average. He has the ability to rush from different alignments. This is a guy who can start as a base end, and he's got versatility to play up and down the defensive front based on what the coach needs in terms of a pass rush. So if he's available there, I think he'd be a solid pick at 42 for the Giants in the second round.
Yeah, I completely agree. And even though y'all have had some very good choices, they're all boring to me because I love my superstars. And I think Elijah Moore, who I'm not 100% sure is now going to be available at this Giants second round pick, because if you don't get him in the second round, you're not getting him. But I think Elijah Moore is the pick. He reminds me a lot of DK Metcalf and how he was I think it was a third round pick, or he was a late first, or he was not a highly touted player.
Parsons off the board now, guys.
That's what we figured it was going to be. Best defensive player left outside of cornerback. We'll talk about that in a little bit. Elijah Moore, balanced athlete. He can go up and down. He can accelerate out of cuts. He is someone who is very good vertically. He is almost the opposite of AJ Brown. Again, 5'1", 178 pounds, but he is somebody who can be a featured playmaker in any offense in the NFL. And if he can just gain, obviously, a little bit of height, which is obviously a problem of Devontae Smith, which is why he fell to 10. If he can be better as an outside receiver, because I don't think his speed translates a lot to the slot, I think he needs to be a better blocker. And he is a little immature, because a lot of people get that kind of label from Ole Miss, especially when you're being coached by the lane train out there. But I think Elijah Moore is a very good pick, would be a good pick. And obviously, again, has to be a second round pick for the New York Giants, or he's going to get scooped off of the board. And again, I've said to all of you, there are 10 to 12 wide receivers who, if you play fantasy football next year, you're going to see them in your top 100, and you're going to want to start them almost every single week because they're going to be reliable. And in this NFL, most of them are going to be unguardable because you're not allowed to actually defend wide receivers now in the NFL. This just is.
Rabbi, I understand where you're coming from, and I think in a vacuum, he's definitely an NFL caliber wide receiver. But to me, I think the signing of Galladay kind of, I don't see the Giants going for a receiver in the second or third round. I think they're going to shift their focus in those rounds to looking at, offensive line, or looking at potential playmakers on the other side of the ball. Joe, what do you think?
Again, it depends on, again, now it all does change to best athlete that's left up there. I don't think they're looking position at all. I just think, again, they're probably one of the teams that had 20 guys who were in the first round. And when those top guys went, they decided to move back. Jordan Raanan, who writes for ESPN, just said, this is a fleecing by the Giants.
Yes, it is.
To get that many picks,
it is.
especially next year's picks that are worth a lot of money. He also said NASCAR would have right-hand turns before Dave Gettleman would ever trade down. But
I guess NASCAR is going to have right-hand turns this year.
Exactly. So
I guess we're going to see a lot of crashes next year in NASCAR this year in NASCAR.
So
because,
I think they go back to best available, and so you're going to have to go back to looking at your board and seeing who they had up there. I do agree with you. I'd like to see another. They did sign Galladay, but they also signed Ross, the guy from Cincinnati.
It's the guy who used to play for Cincinnati. It was highly touted out of Washington.
They do have a couple of guys coming back. They have Lorenzo Carter coming back from injury. They have O'Shane Zimenez coming back from injury. So you do have a lot of guys who can step into places, but now it's all about depth of this team. Now it's about offensive line depth. It's about cornerback depth. It's about wide receiver depth, and it's about linebacker depth. So they're really in a good spot at this point where they did such a good job in free agency of building this team with guys who are NFL players. Now you got these guys to come in that don't have to start right away, that don't have to produce. And it's going to be about building depth the rest of the way. And then next year, you're going to have, 2 first-round picks, which we haven't had in a long time. One of them may be very good.
Hopefully not ours.
Yeah. It's like, who knows what you're going to wind up with. But it could be pretty. Yeah, hopefully ours is number 31 or 32, but I think they really put themselves in a really good spot because they did such a strong job in free agency that getting this extra pick in the later rounds, it's all right now about athletes, special teams, versatile guys, and depth.
And again, they got a first round pick next year for just dropping 9 spots in a position where they didn't really have anybody in that elite set. Again, the pick, by the way, I'm sorry, Joe, I miscorrect. You were correct. It is pick number 20, and it is a 5th round pick this year and a 1st and 4th round pick next year, which is insane. I love it. Dave Gettleman, you magnificent bastard, getting a 1st round pick after the Eagles and Cowboys basically screwed you out of Devontae Smith.
I can't wait to see his press conference tonight or tomorrow morning because we've been picking on him for weeks about how he never trades down. And he said it the other day. He said, guys, it's not like I don't take phone calls. He said, but I'm not getting screwed. I'm not getting run over.
By the way, Rabbi, I gotta throw this out there. We're both Western fans. How do you think Stephon is feeling right now, knowing the Bills probably got fleeced for Justin Fields?
I think so. Here's the thing, and I want to, and actually, you know what? I'm going to let's wait until New England's pick to transfer our picks to the quarterbacks because I have a feeling that's where we're going to see them all go. But I actually think listen, Andy Dalton was not the answer for the Chicago Bears. Andy Dalton is a veteran presence, and Andy Dalton was a steady hand last year for Dallas, but you weren't winning most games with Andy Dalton as your quarterback. I think Justin Fields gives you a better chance to win. Maybe not now,
and we can
more in 2 to 3 years.
And we can talk about that in the quarterback segment. But Rabbi, let's kind of
I'm going to go and look back right now just for pick 7 to 10, but we have enough time. We still have 7 picks before we go to pick 20, Joe.
Rabbi, one last point. The Cowboys moved back and gave up that top player, gave up, the Heisman Trophy winner, and got a 4th round pick.
Yes.
One pick.
Yes, it is amazing. And again, gentlemen, you magnificent bastard. Okay. We talked about the 6 teams in this year's draft already, but let's give some love to teams 7 through 9, that being the Dolphins, Panthers, and Broncos. Wait, what? We have to talk about those 2 bastard NFC East teams that ended up picking at number 10? That's why this is a top 10 segment? Okay, fine. All right, let's analyze some of these picks. And I said non-quarterbacks, of course, but none of them ended up being quarterbacks. So we can legitimately talk about picks 7 through 10. Jay, you talked about Penei Sewell before. I might as well let you continue the conversation. He's such a great pick for Detroit.
You know what? And this is the thing. When you're looking at guys who far and away, are the best pick at your particular position. And when you look at the top 3, the big board on for a lot of these media outlets like The Athletic, like ESPN, like NFL.com, Sewell is a top 5 guy. 6'5", 331 pounds. The guy, astonishingly efficient with his movement. Great natural flexibility and footwork. Everybody talks about his physical traits, but this is a guy who makes really good reads. His reflexes are really good for a player his age. One of his coaches said, I think of him overall, the best football player I've been around, combination of IQ, the want to, the work athletic, and the raw ability. Is the guy going to have to develop his body angles, his timing, and some finishing skills? Yeah, but this is a guy who not only projects as an NFL starter at left tackle, but I don't know how you take one look at him and don't see, a guy who could be a Pro Bowler not too much into his NFL career. There's not a lot of negatives about this guy. Look, he opted out of this past year, but this is a guy who was a freshman All-American, all Pac-12 honorable mention, unanimous All-American Outland Trophy winner in 2019. first team all Pac-12 again. You know, there's not a lot of bad things you can talk about with this guy. Does he have what we would consider elite length and reach by NFL standards? Yeah, maybe not. You know, sometimes he plays too much with rushers, and occasionally he gets out-angled in the run game. He may need to work on his body positioning a little bit, but this is a guy who has, you know, he needs to be, that mean streak of his needs to kind of be consistent to help him finish off. This is a guy who's still discovering, you know, just how good he can be. And it may take him a little time to ramp back up because he missed all of last year. You know, he missed the second half of his freshman season with a high right ankle sprain, needed surgery, had a torn left labrum in his shoulder before senior year in high school. So is he going to get tagged with a little bit of an injury bug? Maybe. But I mean, this is a guy who allowed 1 sack in 1,376 career snaps at Oregon. You know, you can badmouth the Pac-12 in terms of, you know, its status as a league. But I mean, I don't care where you play. That's a hell of a record right there. So, I mean, this is a guy who's he's gonna start day one. And I think he'll be able to, this is a guy who, if he doesn't have a Pro Bowl level career, as long as he stays healthy, I'm going to be very surprised. And Rabbi, you know, you talk about, you know, the difference between him and the rest of the guys who are projected at the top of the draft in offensive tackles. There's only two other guys who have first round grades, and that's Rashawn Slater out of Northwestern and Christian Darrisaw out of Virginia Tech. Tevin Jenkins is somebody who's late first or early second, but I mean, this is a guy who's far and away at the top of the gap between you know, him and Slater is a pretty decent gap. That's
it's a decent gap.
No disrespect to Slater, but that just goes to show you how good Sewell is. And I think he's going to step in day one, and I think he's going to be able to do just fine at left tackle. I mean, if you want to, I think he'll have an even better rookie season than, you know, the number one tackle off the board last year, who Thomas for the Giants. So I think he will. And it'll be interesting to see how, if Jared Goff actually gets his play back up to his previous level, because he's not so much worried about guys coming up his backside because he's got Sewell protecting him.
And we don't want to have that low of bar of Andrew Thomas. And by the way, Slater just got picked, and he will be protecting Herbert for years to come in Los Angeles.
Wow.
So it's a great pick. That's a great pick.
Let me tell you, props to the Chargers for that pick. Anytime you can put an elite level, at least potential wise, an elite level offensive tackle behind a franchise quarterback like Herbert, that's a great pick.
Okay, guys. So I'm going to talk about the great pick now. Oh, hello? Oh, yeah. My ode to the cell phone. I don't have a flip phone anymore, but one of my favorite wide receivers back in the 90s is Joe Horn. And Joe Horn's son is now playing in the NFL, and his name is J.C. Horn. He went to Carolina at number 8. He is a 3-year starter from South Carolina. He is long. He is agile. His instincts are amazing. Oh, we have a big trade. I'm going to have to stop talking in a second.
The Jets just jumped up.
I know. I just saw. So let me go quickly with Horn. Long, agile. You got outstanding instincts. You have competitive mentality. This is a winner of a pick. I am very excited to see J.C. Horn perform in that Carolina defense. So, guys, the Jets moved up to 14, which was the pick of the Minnesota Vikings. Guys, I don't want to do a prediction here, but who are they going for at this spot?
There must be somebody that they're looking at. I mean, look, we all know the type of needs that the Jets have, you know, that they need, you know, slot that they're looking to fill, you know, running back, offensive line, cornerback, pass rusher, depth at wide receiver, or
the entire franchise pretty much.
What happened?
They jumped in front of New England too.
Yeah.
They jumped
Yeah.
in front of New England. I'm curious about that. They obviously just picked. Wouldn't it be funny if they just told Mac Jones and said, "Screw you, New England"? But I don't think that's going to happen. They're not the Eagles or the Cowboys. I have no clue what the Jets want to do here. The obvious pick, and I know Joe, you and me agree. The guy from Alabama is
Najee Harris.
yes, should be the pick, but if they're going up to 14, that means that they thought Arizona wanted him at 16. Because I think unless something is amiss, New England is going to pick Mac Jones with that next pick. Man, this is a show that has gone off the rails because of all of this local activity
Well,
here.
Rabbi, you like chaos, so be careful what you wish for. Because
I've been off the rails in a good way, but I'm very interested to see.
Hey, look, we thought that the chaos was done when March Madness ended, and here we go a few weeks later, and let's face it, I have no idea what the hell the Jets are going to do right
Rabbi,
now.
they may take Etienne too. They may take Travis Etienne instead of Najee Harris.
Etienne is a very huge stretch at 14. I don't know. I think a lot of people were. It is the Jets, but considering they had, outside of picking up Le'Veon Bell last year. By the way, that pick they're giving up 66 and 86, which means they're going to give up their 2/3 this year to move up the 9 spots, and they'll get back what looks like a 4th. And I think we know who the pick is. We'll get to it in a second. It looks like, from what I'm reading here, it's going to be Elijah Vera Tucker from USC. So, Jay, you've seen him. Talk about him for just a second.
I'll tell you, we talk about how Sewell is considered far and away the top offensive tackle in the draft. But, when you're talking about guards, this guy is number one, at least in terms for me, at the top of that draft board at that particular position. Watched him play at USC. He's going to come in, and I think this is a guy who can come in and start straight away. Let me just pull himself up here. All Pac-10. This is a guy who has been pretty, does the job in both the run game and the pass game. And, with the NFL becoming as much an inside passing, collapsing the tackle type of pass rush as it is, guys coming from the perimeter, there's a reason this guy is number one on the guard draft board. This is balanced, agile, stays patient, under control in his pass sets. He sets his feet and he mirrors to stay square to pass rushers. He's got very physical hands, good strike, maintains spacing between defenders in his body. This is a guy who's got functional strength to win hand battles in the run game. He gets defenders and he turns them away from the play, which is something you're going to need from a guy who is protecting a quarterback in Zach Wilson, who, as I said earlier, sometimes gets a little nervous when he sees the pocket collapsing in front of him. This is a guy who processes things quickly. He picks up to pick up stunts and delayed pressure. He looks very comfortable pulling and engaging linebackers at the next level. This is a guy who, if there's no one in front of him initially, he's going to go looking for somebody to hit. And he will go downfield. He's considered to be average size and length by NFL standards. 6'4", a little bit over 6 feet, a little over 300 pounds. But I mean, there's a reason he gets raved about. So 2-year starter. He spent some time at left tackle in Graham Harrell's scheme. So we saw him put up some good film, both in his zone and in power blocking. Spent his first 2 seasons with his Trojans at guard before moving to outside tackle. So he gives you good versatility, good pass protector. And this is something that's gonna benefit the Jets at the pro level. Starting NFL guard, Pro Bowl ceiling, versatility to slide over to tackle if you need him. I really applaud the pick. Joe Douglas said it was his mission to improve the offensive line, and this is a great start.
Yeah, I really like the pick. I really think Elijah Vera Tucker is going to be, he could easily have this feeling of being a Pro Bowl level offensive tackle. By the way, the pick is official. That pick was originally reported by The Athletic, now being made official on television. He could just play a lot of positions in the NFL, and I think the Jets just need that in their offensive line. I don't know if I would have given up picks to move up 9 spots, but I think Tucker is by far the best grade at the guard spot.
Yeah.
And I think this was, if you're going to get a guy at this spot, this is what you get. You don't really have too many offensive weapons left. Middle of the round, you're starting to see some blockers go. Great pick. I think you got to do what you can to protect Zach Wilson. And yeah. I think this is perfect. By the way, I would have loved to see the New England Patriots just cower in fear, realizing, oh no, the Jets have traded up over us. What do we do? Are they going to screw with us right here? Luckily, they didn't, and we'll talk about Mac Jones most likely going to the Patriots in just a moment.
Rabbi, I got to tell you, I mean, you talk about the difference between, the distance between Sewell and the next guy down in the tackle. It's the same thing with Vera Tucker and the next guys,
down a guard,
board, which is Landon Dickerson and Alex Leatherwood. Both these guys are out of Alabama. Dickerson has some medical issues. But that's the difference in terms of how people have the guard ranking on the draft board. When you've got a guy who spent his first 2 seasons playing left tackle, so he moves over. He played left guard only in 2019. That's the difference. I mean, a guy who's basically spent 1 year at the guard position, before moving to left tackle, that tells you something. It's a great pick.
Guys, Anthony, Joe?
Yeah, I'm looking at his footage and highlight reels right here. You know what, Jay, we played on offense. Don't we love our big guys, our offensive lineman up front who is not afraid to get downfield, block, and mix it up and get physical? Yeah. Those are the guys I want on my team. It's the fact that he's versatile. He's played tackle. If needed, he can move to the outside if possible. He got great technique and fun, keeping guys in front of him without holding, which is very important because in the NFL, it don't take much to call for a holding penalty. But the fact that he's able to keep a pocket stabilized long enough for a quarterback to make a play, that's very key. And you know what? I think it's a great pick for the Jets. I mean, he's just the next best lineman that's available. A guard that's versatile, that can play the outside position, and yeah, you got the quarterback. Now you got to build from the. You got to go to Bill Parcells' spot. Start building from the inside out just a little bit.
Just a little bit.
Hey, let me cut you off just for a second. Joe, you were talking about how the Jets needed wide receivers in this draft. Obviously, there's nobody really available at 15 unless you want to put Rashad Bateman of Minnesota there, and that's a little bit of a stretch considering he kind of lost his value. But if you're going to pick someone on the offensive side, this is about as good as any of a choice.
Especially if you're going to move up to do it. That's, again, we were talking about there may only be 20 or 25 guys who actually have first round grades in this draft. So go up and get that guy. And as Jay said, he's the number 1 guard. If you can pass all these other teams up and take that and leave them back to pick from what's going to be left of those last 10 picks that aren't first round guys. And again, you're going to be able to get your running back in the second round. That's going to be easy at this point. So, and then New England takes Mac Jones that we all thought was going to happen. So, and without having to move up, as you said, they still wound up, as Belichick knows, he wound up getting the guy he wanted and didn't have to give anything up for him. So,
let's talk, guys. We have a time to talk about Mac Jones in a second. I have a feeling that quarterback segment's going to last us the rest of the show. Let's quickly, we left off on J.C. Horn at pick number 8. Let's quickly talk about who Denver picked at 9. And Anthony, Patrick Surtain Jr. is about as good of a choice as you can get. A lot of people had him rated over Horn.
I did.
Yeah.
You had him rated over Horn. I think a lot of people eventually rated him over Horn. but Horn got picked first. I'm very curious. Why is Surtain a good pick for the Denver Broncos?
Yeah, you know what? Surtain is a guy who can literally get in and start right away. He's a shutdown corner. He's great one-on-one. And you look at how the Denver Broncos defensive backfield really struggled. And I would say that they were only 7 interceptions last season, among the worst in the league. They gave up a high completion percentage outside the numbers and down the field. So the Broncos defensive backfield needed a lot of help. I think that's pretty obvious. They signed Ron Darby and Kyle Fuller, and they need to be a little more aggressive in addressing the cornerback position and being able to get Surtain and kind of, I guess, show up that nickel corner position, which is so important in the NFL. Because like I said, a lot of those the speedsters are the guys who normally wouldn't play on the outside. They can win that one-on-one battle on the inside. They play the slide, and you're gonna need a guy who can try to take away the slide and them underneath passes. And Surtain really does have the athleticism to do that. He'll be a great addition for the Denver. Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna argue that pick because that is a need-based pick, and
Yeah.
the Broncos definitely needed to show that need.
Yeah, and Rabbi, we all thought when we talked about the trade this morning, we knew that Denver was off the quarterback market. So look, you can talk bloodlines all you want, and he's got them. So cornerback is essentially, you can say it's in his DNA. But I mean, this is a guy, and I look at the scouts' take on him, and here's a couple of takes here. Everything you want, can run with the little guys, big enough and strong enough to fight off the big, strong wide receivers. Close to being a shutdown guy where you can say, you got this guy, make sure he catches only 2 or 3 passes for 12 yards. Touch his stiffness, even though technically he mitigates it very well. He's a pro more than the others. He plays a similar style to his dad, both really good technicians, almost to the point where you don't appreciate, the athletic ability. This is a guy who was a 3-year starter, lined up in a man-heavy scheme, playing mostly press man and off man, while seeing some reps at the nickel, the nickel slot. This is the guy who's been groomed to play defensive back at a high level pretty much since he came out of the womb. He only allowed
So did
4
J.C. Horn, though, apparently.
Hey.
He decided to get away from his father's
there you go.
pass catching skills.
Look, this is a guy who only allowed 4 touchdowns and a 46% completion rate in 41 career games. Plays sticky coverage, doesn't panic downfield, consistently stays balanced and in phase. He's athletic and his false steps are infrequent. Yeah, he doesn't have the suddenness in movement where you wonder if explosive wide receivers will get a chance to separate early. But this is a guy who and while he may lack elite strength and twitch for the position, he's smooth, he's instinctive, and the game happens slower for him than most cornerbacks, which is what you're looking for. That means he basically comes in about as pro-ready as a cornerback can be. Especially guys who can come in and step in and play man coverage and be the guy that you can see leaving alone to stay on a number 1 wide receiver for an entire game and put him on an island. That's a rare quality for a guy coming into this league. It's a great pick. Fangio is a defensive guy, as you know. You got to have, there's no such thing, just like there's no such thing as having too many pass rushers. There's no such thing as having too many good cornerbacks in the league in this day and age.
And
Wait,
Jay,
but-
I like to add it. I don't know. I'll try to add this quickly. I even add that and this is another thing you saw. I love his confidence. When he takes the field, he literally feels like he can take away half the field. And you want a guy that can do that. And he reminds me of a lot of Patrick Peterson. And that was the same scouting report with him. Didn't have the speed, the movement, the twitch, none of that. He was he turned out to be a damn good corner for Arizona for a lot of years.
Yep.
I will say this, though, before we finish our segment here, our cornerback corner, as we are talking on this NFL draft decision. I would trust J.C. Horn more because of his explosiveness to cover their number 1 wide receiver. I would trust Surtain to be part of my scheme, if that makes any sense. I don't know if Surtain can take away half of the field, but I don't know if I'm going to put Surtain on, say, Tyreek Hill, because it's the best example out there. That Surtain is not going to get his doors blown off. I think he'll learn his way to get to that. But I think obviously Tyreek Hill is the number one example. But if you have a speedy wide receiver, he may be able to get some touchdowns. Before we get to five, guys, Joe needs to talk here because you were talking about Devontae Smith as a very good pick for the Giants at number 11. But the Eagles, once again, screwed over the Giants like they always do, jumped over the Cowboys, who decided to trade them a measly third-round draft pick. And the Cowboys decided to trade in division. Again, damn you, Jerry Jones. And Devontae Smith is an Eagle. Good fit?
Yeah, back to Surtain for 1 second. You know, he's got to play Kansas City twice a year, and he's got to play the Chargers twice a year. So he's going to have his hands full. You're going to know right away just how good he is and if he can stick with those guys that you brought up.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, Devonta Smith is the only knock on Devonta Smith that I would agree with is his size. Now, he's learned to play at that size. The NFL doesn't allow the big hits that you used to get in the old days. He's not going up against Ronnie Lott. He's not going up against some of these guys, Jack Tatum's. You know, you're not allowed to do that anymore. So as long as somebody doesn't take him out at his knees and he's smart enough and he still plays the same way he did, it's a fantastic pick. They don't have anybody to throw the ball to him, and that's going to be an issue for this year or next year or whatever when they decide on who's going to be a quarterback down there. You know, they need to go with Hurts and they need to develop him, and this is a good guy to have out there. I don't know what's going on with their tight end and all that stuff. The team's still a little bit of a mess, but I think it was a great pick for them, and I think it was a smart move to jump up and do it. I think Dallas made a mistake to get one extra third round pick. Doesn't make any sense. And again, you could have done it the old fashioned way, Rabbi, is you could have drafted him and traded him to him.
I think it was more because of the fact that they really wanted the guy from Notre Dame. It really wanted Person. And I think the only way they thought that was possible is to trade away from the Giants and just get down just a little bit farther, because any farther than 13, even the Chargers might have decided to go with Parsons. Okay.
The other thing, I mean, we've been talking about it all night, and to me, this is just another scenario. Jalen Hurts and Devonta Smith, two guys who, they didn't overlap for an extended period of time. They did overlap at Alabama. They know each other. It's a guy who they've played together. And again, quarterback and wide receiver, a young quarterback, having a guy as his, that he has a connection with already. To me, that's a big thing. And I think, pro personnel guys are starting to understand that the sooner your young quarterback can build a rapport with a guy who you think highly of at the wide receiver position goes a long way in improving your offense down the road. So it's an interesting pick. We'll see how Doug Peterson utilizes him. Because Peterson's not there anymore. We'll see how
Nick Sirianni is going to be interesting how he brings back the Colts.
Because he's another new head coach where you're not 100% sure what kind of scheme he's going to run. So we'll see how he makes use of two guys here who have an existing connection and whether or not he can put them together to hook up as often as possible in the NFC East.
And if you realize Devontae Smith's most famous pass was the one that
he
caught to win the national title game, and he did that from Tua. He only caught 8 passes that year, but he probably has Alabama's most famous touchdown in the history of that program.
And I'll tell you this, guys, Devonta's been a little torqued at people constantly asking him about his size or lack thereof. I will be interested to see how much he uses it as motivation to go out and show everyone that his size doesn't mean jack. 6'1", 175. He's light, and he's for a wide receiver. But as Joe said, they don't let you get away with killing these guys on crossers over the middle anymore. There's no more.
Not running into Carl Banks anymore. Let's put it
there.
Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see. I think Devonta Smith can play in this league and play at a high level. he just needs a quarterback who can get him the damn ball.
Yeah, damn right. And I think it's going to be very interesting. And the only problem with that is the Eagles are pretty much a mess right now. I'm not hoping, but Nick Sirianni has a lot of work to do in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
All right, let's talk quarterbacks, guys. This should be fun. I know earlier in this show I said one quarterback is not a teammate. That was like 6 hours ago. That was when I was talking about the Bengals, but now I'm going to add this saying. One is screwed without competent QB. So Jay, we were going to have you talk about Justin Fields. This is a perfect opportunity. He went to the Bears as they traded with the Giants to get the number 11 pick. What is Justin Fields going to bring to the Bears, and does he start in year one?
I will say this. This is a guy who I have had a lot of back and forth with a lot of people on Justin Fields. I was not as high on him as I was on some of the other guys in this draft. And he's hands down the most controversial quarterback in this draft. There are people who thought, he would go top 5. I'm on it. There are people who are going to be shocked that he fell this far. I'm not, and here's the thing is that, and this is a quote by a scout that I think is going to be telling, an offensive coach. The best thing that Field does is throw downfield, but he wouldn't be able to make a living doing that in the NFL. Fields needs to be used the right way in an offense that features pocket movement, play action, and highlights his athleticism. Quote, you have to construct an offense around what he can do. You can't plug him into a standard offense. And this is what I've been, kind of pounding into you guys, is that the guy has to be able to either be a good fit for the scheme, and if he's not, you have to figure out how what he does best can be, fits. You work that around your scheme. The good thing for Fields here is going to Chicago, and I hope that they do the smart thing and let him sit for a year behind Andy Dalton, or at least do what the Giants did with Eli and Daniel Jones, and at least let him sit for a few games before you throw him out there. The thing is that he's hard to grade. His physical abilities are off the chart. He's got a rocket arm. He's accurate. He's big. He's tall. He's a great athlete. But the thing that I've been stuck on, and I'm not the only one, is his ability to process the game. There are a lot of people, and I'm among them, who don't feel he processes things as quickly as NFL people would like him to. You want to see he needs to work on his drop and moving through his progressions, but his speed and his arm talent are almost fail-proof, and he doesn't have any bad character issues. He's great high floor, but, and Rabbi, you and I talked about this, how he often people think he gets painted with the same brush as other Ohio State quarterbacks, because as well as they play in the system, started with Urban Meyer and Day uses the same system, they don't seem to perform well at the NFL level. And that's the thing that's concerning, Well,
let's think about this. One thing that I've always said to you is when you're in Ohio State, you're handed a lot of keys and you're basically told to take the wheel and steer through just the navigation. And there were even times this year that Fields didn't do that. I said again, 2020 is kind of a lost year for everybody. And you saw what the ceiling for Justin Fields was in a high pressure situation. And that would be in the Sugar Bowl when he just destroyed Clemson and used every part of his body to make plays. However, Jay, he's still not a good reader. He still doesn't know how to read an NFL defense.
Yeah, and the thing is that, because that's what he comes into, and are there examples on film where he does make, goes through his progressions, makes the right read, and goes to the right guy, with the good sight adjustments, and taking advantage of voids left by blitzers, sure. But, there's the concern is that he doesn't adjust well against the blitz, that, he doesn't make the reads off, doesn't recognize who's coming at him and making the read to go to the hot guy. So And NFL defensive coordinators are going to throw every look in the book at him until he proves that he can make those adjustments. And I think part of the issue here is that in the offense he was working in, it doesn't look like he was given a lot of tools in order to react to potential blitzes. Ohio State's offense doesn't use hard counts to get a defense to show blitz. They don't use sight adjustments. The receivers and the quarterbacks don't do those post snap, where you can take advantage of, as I said, voids left by blitzers. It's not just Fields doesn't do that. His receivers don't do that either as well. So, yeah, I mean, you can talk about how he played against Clemson, and we all know that Brett Venables was one of the most aggressive defensive coordinators in the country. In that game, he threw 6 touchdown passes, and usually, he seemed to adjust well against Clemson's blitz. There's a play in that game where, he looked like he saw a blitz, and after the snap, he threw to his tight end. Before the tight end got his hand around, the placement of the pass was practically perfect, threw it to the back shoulder to beat the guy, who was dropping in the zone from coming the other side of the field, and you saw some improvement against Clemson and against Alabama, where he played better than what the numbers he put up. And the offense was just outmatched, but he needs to focus on studying blitzes, know exactly how to counter him, because NFL defensive coordinators are going to try and light him up with as many exotic blitzes as they possibly can, which is why I say that if the Bears are smart, they let him sit for a year and learn the pro game from a guy like Andy Dalton, who, while he may not be the best quarterback to ever play the game, this guy's a pro's pro.
Absolutely.
And, it's this, to me, I equate the situation similar to what Daniel Jones had with Eli Manning. Again, you have a pro's pro guy who's been in the league, who's seen everything, who knows the game. And while Andy Dalton may no longer have the miles per hour on his fastball that he used to, he showed us last year with Dallas, he can still win you a football game. So I think he's still a competent NFL quarterback. And if he's not a bad guy to learn from. If you need to expand your IQ to understand how the game is played at the pro level. And
yeah,
because every other Ohio State quarterback we've seen in recent drafts, they've all got the big cannon arm. They've all got the athleticism. They get thrown into the fire right off, and none of them have managed to make the cut.
Okay. First of all, I want to circle back for a second. Believe it or not, we had a nice little call over there when Nisa said he would love to see Jalen Phillips of Miami get picked with the Dolphins' second-round pick. He did at number 18.
Nice call, Nisa.
So Miami does get the U. We're going to talk about players that should be drafted later on in a little bit, but I want to get one more thing on Fields before we get to Mac Jones, Joe. You've been very critical of Dwayne Haskins' time in Ohio State because he had no work ethic at all. Do you see those traits in Fields?
No, not at all. I think he's a tougher guy. I think he showed a lot last year's championship game coming back. I thought they should have left him in the locker room at halftime after that hit he took, just to save his life. To hell with winning that ball game. And even after they were up a while, to leave him playing in there, I thought was irresponsible. But obviously he wanted to play, and he's healthy enough. And we think he's healthy enough. We don't know if any doctors actually got a chance to look at him with all this, with all the things that are going on. But he's a much tougher kid. I think he has, Haskins actually did all those guys a favor now going forward, because everyone's going to look at that Ohio State quarterback position like we just did and say, you don't play anybody during the season. Your offense could be run by anybody. You stick somebody in there, you get 8-10 seconds to throw the ball. You've got 100 wide receivers, you got 100 running backs. Everybody wants to go play in Ohio State because they're always in the playoffs. So it's a whole different world. So he's going to have a little bit more to prove because of the conversation Jay just had. And the question you just asked me, he's got a lot more to prove than a Mac Jones, than the kid that went to San Francisco, who everybody's going to wow out. When Fields throws his first interceptions, they're going to go, yeah, see, he's not going to be any good. Whereas everybody else has a little bit of an upside. But Chicago has made this mistake before where they throw guys in. And I agree with you, Jay. Andy Dalton is as close to learning behind an Eli Manning or somebody of that nature, or an Alex Smith even, who's seen it all, who's not afraid to share, who help him out, who will take him under his wing. Andy knows he's on his way out. He took a year off. He thought he was taking a year off last year, going to Dallas, and wound up playing 8 games. But he knows he's on his way down, and he would like to probably take this kid and do whatever he can with him and reach out to him and help him through what it's going to be like in Chicago, because that's not going to be a friendly place after after trying to sell you Mitch Trubisky for 3 years and trying to sell you the offensive genius head coach who couldn't get anything out of anybody.
He's still there though. That's the problem.
I know, but I'm just saying, so it's not going to be a fun place to play if you start off 0-3 or 0-4, because it's going to be, here we go again. When do we get rid of the coach? So he's in a tough spot, but I think he's a tough kid. It's kind of local. He played in Ohio. You're right there. So I think he'll do just fine there, but it's not going to be an easy transition, because although people will be glad to see Mitchell gone, it's still going to be, what can you do? And now that we've made that trade, I hope they finish at 3-13 and
I'm fine. Coming next year, baby. Take your time with Dalton and put him in for 17 games. Please.
I'll tell you this, guys. I think the thing that Fields has going for him is unlike Haskins, he doesn't have any maturity issues. There's no red flag character issues on this kid. So I don't think he's going to have an issue. If he sits back, and has and learns plays behind Dalton at the outset. I just hope Nagy doesn't cave into any outside pressure to rush this kid into the throw him into the fire. You don't have to. Dalton can be the bridge guy. Let him be the bridge guy. You've screwed up your last few picks at quarterback. Try not to screw this one up.
And also, I think it goes back to what we were talking about. One second, Robert. It goes back to what we were talking about. Value is, Dwayne Haskins was the 26th or 27th ranked player in the draft, and they went up and grabbed him at 15. So, and that's why. And the guys who wanted him to go to the Giants at 6, you had to sit there and go, you don't take the 25th best player at number 6. You shouldn't have gone up and gotten him at 15. At least this guy is drafted pretty much where you thought he was going to be. And some guys lower, but higher, but he's right in that area where he could have been in what is really not a great draft. So.
Anthony, help us close out for a second.
I think the fact that he falls out of the top 10 actually does him a favor. Yeah. I think the situation he comes to, falling out of the top 10, going to a team that has an established veteran quarterback, I think it benefits him. And as long as, like I said, as long as the Bears don't screw this up, Fields has a chance to be a solid quarterback. And look, when the guy you're essentially replacing is Mitchell Trubisky, the bar's not that high.
Anthony, the floor is yours.
Yeah, I was gonna say it helps Justin Fields. Like, he's to stay in Big Ten country and basically stay in in that area. He's going to Illinois, with Chicago. It helps that, like I say, he has a veteran quarterback. But more importantly, there are a few days he does need to work on. He does need to be a better, anticipation passer, being able to get the passes, those receivers open. Don't be so quick to run out of the pocket, because guys are waiting for him to light him up. If he doesn't do the little things, like if you scramble out of the pocket, get what you get and slide down to keep yourselves from getting blown up. But like I said, there's a lot of things, and I think the pressure of falling out of the top 10 does help him, and the fact that he can sit a year, he can learn everything. And you understand, Bills fans are still angry about the whole Patrick Mahomes thing. They get to see him be a
Deshaun Watson thing, the Patrick Mahomes thing. There's other situations of team players that the Chicago Bears could have had next year. So guys, we have the Giants pick coming up here at number 20, unless it's a trade down, but God help me if it's a trade down. Is there any possibility here that we don't think it's going to be defense? I think this has to be a defensive pick now with who's on the board. Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, you
I
had
would
Derek
tend to
Shaw from
agree.
Tech, but I think this has to be a defensive pick now.
I would think the Giants would definitely go defense. I mean, yeah, the kid from Notre Dame, Jeremiah, the inside
Jeremiah
linebacker.
Usu Karamoa, by the way.
Karamoa, yes, Usu Karamoa. You got him at inside linebacker. You got Kwity Paye from Michigan, who's a lineman, who's a defensive end and pass rusher. Let's see, Caleb Farley. We talked about the defensive backfield and the depth there. There's a number of directions the Giants can go. Greg Newsome, the second. I thought, that's a guy.
Yeah, he's still on the board.
Would go after at 23 before they traded up.
Yeah, he's who I had the Jets taking, Anthony. So yeah, he's still on the board there.
Derek Shaw is going to be a good pick too, by the way, because you're going to need somebody to get holes open for Barkley again. You're going to need someone to protect Daniel Jones. I think, as we said, in the pantheon of offensive tackles in this draft, you have Sewell, you have Slater, and then you have Derek Shaw at number 3. I mean, there's nobody really here. I mean, you also can go Tevin Jenkins from Oklahoma State. Outside of that, wide receiver, unless they go Bateman from Minnesota, is kind of off of the board for me. There's a lot of ways they can go with this pick. I think having that pick at number 20 allows them to do that without getting criticized by all of the Twitter birds and Twitter trolls that are going to criticize any pick that Dave Gettleman does, because Dave Gettleman will never agree with them.
Yeah, Anthony, I mean, Rabbi, I got to agree with you, because you think about all of the guys who are still on the board at edge rusher, at cornerback, who have first round grades on them. If you take them here, they've essentially fallen to you here. So whoever they take, if he's got a first round grade, it's a good pick. And the guy, because remember, doesn't matter what half of the draft you pick in. The goal with your number 1 pick, your first rounder, is that you're looking for a guy who you feel before the season is even halfway over, he is going to step in and he is going to be a contributor, either as a day 1 starter or, on a defensive line scenario or defensive back scenario. He's in the rotation where he's going to get minimum 50% of the snaps, because you're expecting production out of a guy like this. And honestly, I personally think they should go cornerback, because to me, Adoree Jackson you don't know how healthy this guy is going to be yet. And as I said, you can never have too many cornerbacks. It will not surprise me if they take somebody like Ojulari or Kwity Paye, or even, Jason Oweh out of Penn State, because all 3 of these guys are first round grades on pass rushers. And then we all know the Giants need pass rushing help.
Yeah. We've mentioned all of these names that I know one of them has to be picked here. If none of them does, then I think we should all be embarrassed and we should just end this show.
Well, it just means that, we don't know Dave Gettleman as much as we think we do.
I don't think we ever know Dave Gettleman. Guys, let us look.
Okay, here we go.
Here we go. I probably could have figured this out if I looked at Twitter. The answer is Kadarius Toney.
Wow.
Wide receiver. Kadarius Toney from Florida.
Yeah, and who's he supposed to
the 4th wide receiver off of the board, by the way.
And who is he supposed to remind you of? The guy we mentioned from Kansas City just before, Tyreek Hill.
Yeah,
he's a guy who can swing out of the backfield. He's got return skills. He's got ridiculous speed. He's a guy that, again, you can use him as a running back. You can use him as a wide receiver. You can use him as a slot guy. You can use him as a punt returner. You can use him as a kick returner. He can play all over the field, and that's not a bad thing to have.
No, I mean, Joe, you're spot on. I mean, the guy was first team all SEC as a returner. So, and second team all SEC as a wide receiver. So I got to tell you, I want to be surprised, only because I kind of thought the Giants would go defense here, because there were guys at pass rusher and at cornerback that we just
Yep.
talked about who were available. But, the Giants didn't exactly set the world on fire in the return game last year. So this is a guy, even if he's depth at the in the wide receiver room, I agree with you, John. This is a guy I think it can contribute from day one as a return guy.
No, I think it's a fantastic pick. And again, I have to disagree with some of the stuff that I hear all the time because, again, the Giants finished 9th in defense last year. You've got guys coming back again who can play this thing. You've got Dexter Lawrence. Pass rushing is nice, but that doesn't mean you have to pick a guy that can only play third down. You don't have to pick a Jadeveon Clowney who stands on the sidelines and hopes you get the third down and more than 4 or 5 so he can go play. That's what they don't want to do on this team. They want to get guys who can play 3, 4 downs. You're going to see later on, they'll pick some guys, but they don't like this. That's why I don't even like the term, this edge rusher, because you've made it too specialized a position where, again, as Anthony said before, now it's a luxury. Now we'll go out and get some kid that you can develop. We've got 3 guys on the team we got last year with Lorenzo Carter, Carter Kaplan, Xavier Jimenez. You don't have to get the superstar. You don't have to get this guy to play, again, who's going to take up a lot of money sooner or later and play 1 down every other series because your defense doesn't ever get a team to third down. They play first and second down and you get them off the field on third down because they're in 3rd and 20 or whatever it is. They're not interested in making that kind of an investment at this point. They want to get offensive weapons, but they want to get versatile guys, and they want to keep the guys versatile on defense. So I don't think they were going to go. I thought they could go defense if somebody, like you said, those top corners were still there at 11. But I don't think you reach here and grab some guy that's an edge rusher who, again, may play 5 or 6 times a game. I don't think that's where they are in their progression as a team at this point.
No, and Joe, I'm fully on board with that, which is why my initial thought was when we were talking, are they going to go defense? That's why I initially went to Greg Newsome because, this is a guy who you can, I think, plug in, whether he's, starts the season as your number 2 corner because Jackson's not 100% healthy, or he slides over to the slot because Jackson is. I think that would have been. If you were going to go defense, I think that would have been the pick. I liked him for the Jets as their second first-round pick. So it's interesting to me that they took a guy who, on this side of the ball, his initial contribution is going to be on special teams as opposed to a guy who may give you more production as a cornerback. But then again, the Giants, like I said, the Giants didn't light the world on fire from special teams. So if you can get a guy who, even if he makes 1 or 2, he has the potential to take the ball to the house on any he returns. And to have that as a threat definitely gives you something because that this is a field position game, right? So if this guy is going to, put you in better, give you more short fields because he has the ability to make that first guy miss on the return, whether it's off a kick or off a punt. You know what? If you're going to go that route and you're going to a guy who can immediately contribute on special teams and give you a home run threat as a returner.
And I think being outside the building, Jay, when you everybody goes, Dory Jackson, is he going to be healthy? Well, they talk to him and they put him with their doctors and they have to go into this season saying, we got Bradbury and Adoree Jackson. We now can move Logan Ryan to cover the slot guy who is no slouch. And I don't think you were going to pick a guy at this point that was going to replace one of those guys if everybody was healthy. He was going to wind up standing on the sidelines looking at each other going, gee, I may never play because I can't beat out Logan Ryan and I can't beat out James Bradbury.
Exactly.
And Jackson's playing at level for the next 2 or 3 years. I'm not saying he's going to be there forever. But again, do you pick a guy in the first round who's going to stand there? Because you just said these are the guys you want to have some sort of an impact by midseason. You're going to pick a guy who plays cornerback who's dropped all the way down to number 20, who may never play all year long because he can't break into the starting rotation. So I think it's a great pick because
Yeah.
the other thing, besides John Ross, who they signed from Cincinnati, who has that kind of speed, here's another guy who's got that take the top off the defense speed that we all talk about, that you have to put guys back there. You got to play safeties back there. That opens up Kyle Rudolph, that opens up Sterling Shepard, that opens up everybody
Evan
else.
Ingram. Still have Evan
will
Ingram
play
on this
catch
team.
the ball. You know, I think it just helps the offense to have again, he's a Swiss Army knife type of guy who's got speed. He's tough. He can run. You can run sweeps. You can run reversers. You can run all kinds of stuff with him. And that's going to be what they want to do, is add that speed to this team. Because you saw, you know, when Tyreek Hill is healthy and the offensive line gives Mahomes 3 seconds, nobody can cover the guy. So why not try to build on those type of guys? And I think it's an excellent pick to continue to add those weapons. And the only reason, like I said, Jay, that I'm not disagreeing with you, but I think now that you missed on those 2 top corners that could have walked in and played, you're not going to pick a guy that may never play because they have no need for him.
Well, I mean, to me, Newsome was the third guy.
Yeah.
Because to me, Caleb Farley, as good as he is on film, he's got injury issues.
Right.
So to me, if you were going to go corner, Newsome's the guy because I think he would have played and I think he could potentially beat out Ryan. But like you said, you're trying to provide weapons, a Swiss Army knife. If you're comparing him to another guy who played a similar role at Florida, that's Percy Harvin. If you're looking at him in that vein, then yeah, it's an excellent pick. And it'll be interesting to see, and it'll be on Jason Garrett now to make sure that he comes up with interesting ways to make use of this guy's speed and ability to make plays in space.
So here's the scouting report on him real quick. The uber athletic Tony, who is one of only 2 receivers in this year's draft to earn a maximum 99 athleticism score.
Yeah.
So again, what are we looking for? Best athlete left on the board. The other guy was Jamar Chase. So, you know, if you're going to get a guy who has the same athleticism as the guy that went number 6 at number 20, then that's a plus right there. And that's what they're looking for, right? They're looking for athletes that can do 5 or 6 different things on the field, not just have one lane.
Before we get to the Joe and Jay hour, sponsored by American Express,
Hey, I
Anthony.
can say a word all night.
I know. No, this is a very good conversation. Anthony, this has been a very, very interesting draft for the New York Giants. They've gained capital and they've gained a pretty good piece here. You could fit him in many different ways. Joe was mentioning Tyreek Hill. That's a pretty damn good comparison because in the beginning, Tyreek Hill was specifically a special teams player.
Yeah, without question. I mean, one of the things that I was concerned about when I looked at this Giants receiver core is, where is the speed? You know, you got Galloway coming back from injury. Sterling Shepard's been injury prone the last few years. Darius Slane is a great receiver downfield, but he's not a speedster, and he doesn't kind of blow the top off. As far as defensive coverage, look, when you're able to get a guy with speed who can play the slot, who put up think about this. He put up almost close to 1,000 yards last season and 10 touchdowns, so he's no slouch as a receiver. But a dual threat has a return guy, which can only help the Giants on special teams because they really didn't have much in that department as well. I think it's a good pick to get him at 20. It takes the pressure off. I don't know if this is such as taking the pressure off when you're playing in New York anyway, but it's the fact that the expectations aren't skyrocketing. Like he's gonna come in and be the next Jerry Rice or something like that. He can come in. He can get settled into the offense. What it does is offensively, it gives the Giants an option of playing four wide receivers if they're all healthy. And it gives them the option to run those quick receiver screens out of the backfield with a guy who has athleticism and the speed to actually make a play out of it. And as I said, it's going to be on Jason Garrett because this season, and we're seeing with this draft, this first pick was about giving Daniel Jones as much offensive weapons as he can, and where it's going to be a make or break season because if he can't take advantage of it, maybe he's not the Giants franchise quarterback moving forward. But you want to give him the weapons and the opportunities. Like you want to give him a chance to succeed. Like, give him that option. If he fails, it's on Jones. But you want to feel comfortable as an organization moving forward that you gave him every opportunity you can and the weapons to be successful. And like I said, if a guy falls down to you, it justifies getting him at that draft selection. But also, like I said, it opens up the offense. It's going to be on Jason Garrett to be a little more creative. We get it last season with no training camp and no real OTAs to really install that offense. Garrett kept it simple as possible. Literally has to see, throughout the season.
Yeah.
Because you just didn't have the time to get those reps in. Now you're gonna have the reps back. You get the preseason games back. So now it's no excuse for Jason Garrett. He's kind of the guy that's going to be on the hot seat going into next season when you realize you get the Giants offense and they have the capable weapons and they have a top 10 defense. They should be able to do something for a team, despite its record, only miss winning the division because the Eagles decided to wave the tower in a winnable Week 17 matchup. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Garrett can do with his with creativity. Maybe he get to run the offense that he ran in Dallas when the Cowboys had all those weapons. So we should see.
And you don't have to run Jabril Peppers out there to return punts anymore.
Oh, yeah, that's a very big thing to really help out. So, guys, as we head towards our biggest season ever in the NFL, who are the geniuses that came up with that fucking line? Anyway, we move on to our final topic of the night, and that is the Patriots. They have been looking for an heir apparent to Tom Brady for about a year and a half now. Had to watch Tom Brady win a Super Bowl. And now they might have their answer. Of course, they signed Cam Newton again to a 1 year, I think it was $12 billion contract. And then they finally decided to get their quarterback of the future this year in the draft, not having to do anything with their pick, staying at number 15 and picking Alabama quarterback Mac Jones, who a lot of people had going number 3 to the San Francisco 49ers until they selected Trey Lance. Let's go right back to Anthony. Have the Patriots found their recipe for success for the next 10, 15 years?
You know what? Well, I got Matt Jones there, and I actually said this earlier in the show. Is he good because he's really that good, or is he good because of the style of offense and the weapons he was surrounded by? And that was something I said about Dwayne Haskins a few years ago. Like, he's good, but look at the guys he's playing with. I mean, they can make the average quarterback look like an All-American if you put him in that style of offense. Matt, what I like with Jones is that, you know what? He's a high IQ guy. He's a guy who does a great job of reading defenses right off the bat. He takes care of football too. He doesn't turn the ball over as much. You know, he throws a lot of touchdowns. And we saw what he did in the national championship game. I mean, it was literally a night where you could pick a final score, and Alabama may actually go the over as far as the final score was going to be. Look, when I look at Bill Belichick like guys who are going to study the playbook, high quality IQ guys. And what he has in Cam Newton right now, they re-signed him for another year. It allows Jones time to learn and just hold a playbook. NFL teams never do that anymore. They never allow their young quarterback fresh out of college to hold a clipboard, study, learn, listen, anticipate, pay attention. Those are things that you get from day one. Look, Patrick Mahomes credited Alex Smith an awful lot for that rookie season where he learned and picked up everything from the ground up. Cam Newton is a former league MVP. We tend to forget that these days. New England Patriots offensively last season, especially passing, were terrible. Think back to that Monday Night Football game against the Jets. It was like, can Cam Newton throw more than 10 yards down the field at a time? It was literally, I wouldn't call it 5 yards in a cloud of dust. It was more like 2.5 because that's how bad it was to watch that game. And I just think I like this. With Jones, Bill Belichick will be able to get a year to install the kind of offense that's going to be built around him. The same way, remember, his first year so a quarter as the head coach, Belichick had Drew Bledsoe, who was still good at that time until that fateful injury against the Jets. And then we saw Tom Brady come into the start lineup. Belichick has shown that he is willing to adjust his offense. Think about Tom Brady. He was a play action, ball control offense early on, and when they got him more weapons, he became let's throw the ball to hell with a running game. You got Randy Moss and Wes Welker out there just flinging kind of guy. So I think with Jones, the Patriots needed a quarterback for the future. They got the guy they needed, and in some part, thanks to the 49ers kind of reaching for Trey Lance. Like I said, they drafted on potential. The Patriots are drafting on what Matt Jones have actually done and his experience and the experience that he has. As far as the comparison with Trey Lance can't be overlooked as well.
Again, as Jay had said before, if San Francisco was going to want to get to the playoffs next year, Max Jones was the type of guy to do it. Jay, if New England is going to get to the playoffs next year, Max Jones is the type of person to do so.
Well, I don't know that we're necessarily going to see that happen. I think you brought Cam Newton back, even if you were coming into this draft knowing you were going to draft your future starter. You brought Cam Newton back because you felt whoever you brought in was most likely going to be a different type of quarterback in terms of skill set. So you want to give this kid a year. And look, yeah, Mac Jones, I think, is ready to start tomorrow. And I think, in Belichick and, the offensive coordinator out there, Rabbi, his name's escaping me at the moment.
Josh McDaniels?
Thank you very much. They've shown, and you look what McDaniels and Belichick did, the way they altered the offense and tailored it to fit Cam Newton's skill set. I think they will do the same with Mac Jones. I think Jones will be in a situation where he doesn't have to play immediately. But I think you look at what he brings, this, everybody talks about, he doesn't have the big arm. He doesn't have the big arm. But this is a guy who's a rotational thrower. What does that mean? It means he has good sequencing, keeps his shoulders closed while his front foot strikes the ground. He generates power to come from his hips, which allows him to throw with good velocity and accuracy despite not having a natural big arm. Guy's an excellent ball handler. What does that mean? He can execute different play fakes, and while these are not necessarily a high-end skill set, as we know, play action is a big thing in the NFL. And because he's ability to execute that makes him more pro-ready. Coaches don't have to spend too much time refining those areas. Plenty of play action in the Alabama scheme, which will benefit him coming into the NFL. This is a guy who is solid with anticipation, throws his wide receivers open. He anticipates where the coverage will be, throws his receiver to open spots. He anticipates throwing windows, doesn't wait for the receivers to cross those windows before throwing the ball. He's got a natural sense of how much air he needs to put on downfield throws. He adjusts his route angles to throw passes over defenders, put it where his receiver can get it. Accuracy is the ability to put the ball where you want it. Ball placement is knowing where to throw the ball relative to the route and the location of defenders, and Jones consistently puts the ball in ideal locations, making life easier on his receivers. This is a guy who does a good job of dealing with pressure. He doesn't shy away from stepping up into it. He's got solid pocket awareness. And while he's not going to scramble and make big plays using his legs, neither did Tom Brady. But the thing we used to marvel about Brady is his ability to take one half step here, one half step there, one half step up to avoid the rush and give himself an extra second to make a play. And contrary to popular belief, Jones does a solid job of throwing accurately on the run. But here's just how well he handles pressure. He was sacked on just 3% of his dropbacks last season, and only 13% of his pressures were converted into sacks. And those are numbers lower than Lawrence, Fields, or Wilson. It's a sign of his ability to move in the pocket. Yeah, he had a really great offensive line, but he also gets the ball out really quickly. Here's the thing, though. Avoiding sacks is a good sign for a guy coming into the NFL if you have that ability to sidestep and get away. To me, the only thing he lacks is the big arm. And there's plenty of quarterbacks who've made a living in this league without having a cannon for a right arm. Most notably, the guy who spent 20 years taking the snaps. So I think there's too much made about the fact that he doesn't have the cannon of an arm, compared to Lance, compared to Fields, compared to Lawrence or even Wilson. This guy's going to be a solid NFL quarterback. Does he need to be in the right system? Does he need to have solid players around him? Yes, but here's the thing. Belichick does a really good job of putting together a team that fits the guys that he has. So, is he going to be a Hall of Famer? Probably not. Is he going to have a decent career as an NFL quarterback? I think so.
Jay, there's also one point answer to that question when you say, does he need the system around him? It does need the good players, but who doesn't? No one's ever going to be a guy who is going to make his team better just by himself. No one's Michael Vick, and honestly, no one's Lamar Jackson, but they already
and
have
no one's Patrick Mahomes. And everybody's looking at it, that you got to draft the next Patrick Mahomes or the next Aaron Rodgers. Most of the starting quarterbacks in the NFL are guys who are more like Mac Jones than they are like Patrick Mahomes, because those guys are 1 in a million. You're more likely to get a guy who's going to make the right play, make the right decision, throw the right pass at the right time, and not shoot you in the foot.
Joe, are you more of a Mac Jones or are you more of a Patrick Mahomes type of guy?
No, I think for New England, it's Alabama, Alabama, Alabama. He was taught by his buddy. I'm sure Belichick talked to Saban a lot about him. What kind of kid is he? Is he going to be able to be taught? Is he going to be able to put in a system? And he's not going to learn from Cam Newton. He's learning from that coaching staff. And they're going to take him from day one, and they're going to teach him how to play football. And that's what they do in New England. And don't forget, they went out and got a bunch of tight ends, didn't they, in free agency?
Hunter Henry.
So they knew that already. They knew they were going to get a young quarterback that, again, was going to need that security blanket, was going to need the short throws because he doesn't have a huge arm. And again, hopefully he doesn't learn anything from Cam Newton.
Well, he may learn what not to do from Cam Newton.
How not to dress, how not to treat the media, how not to do all those things, how not to do your hair. But I think what he should do is, again, I think they're going to take him and mold him into what he is. Coming from a pro style, he's the only guy in there who's already played pro football because he's played at Alabama. And he knows how to take a snap. He knows how to do everything. He knows how to call a play in a huddle. The guy from North Dakota State's never called a play in a huddle in college. He looks to the sideline and they do a bunch of signals to everybody. You got the most pro-ready guy, and that's what Belichick wants, is a guy who can play in what he's going to figure out. He's going to say, this is what you're good at. This is what you're not good at. This is what we're going to do. This is how you're going to do it. This is your footwork. This is your arm angle. This is everything you need to learn to be a professional football player. And that's how it's going to work. And he's going to be very good. He's going to be a solid guy. Again, I don't know. I know Rabbi doesn't want me to put him in the Hall of Fame yet, and I'm not.
No, you can. It's funny.
The other guy was a 6th round pick, don't forget, and may not have ever played if not for the famous injury to Mr. Bledsoe. So I think he's going to learn the right way, and he's the most prepared guy to come in.
Yo, guys, it's fun. It's almost hilarious. Sorry, I'm about to curse. We're already 3 hours and 8 minutes into this segment. But it's fine, though. Mac Jones was originally going to be a mid-first round pick and the 5th quarterback coming off of the board. And then he moved into the top 3 because he fit the system. And then all of a sudden, he went back to where exactly he should have been drafted, mid-first round, 5th quarterback coming off of the board. We talk about high ceiling, low floor. That floor is not as low for Mac Jones as it is for others.
Right.
Well, Rabbi, look, the thing is that if he wasn't, the only reason he was going to go at 3 is because, as you said, and as I also said, he fit Shanahan's system. If he wasn't going to go at 3, of course he was going to go much later in the draft because he didn't fit anywhere else. And that's the thing. So if you think about it, there were really only 2 systems where he's tailor-made for them. San Francisco at 3 and the Patriots. So if I'm him, I mean, yeah, would you want to be a top 3? Yeah, be top 3 pick, sure, because you're going to a system where you would fit. And, there's the contract of a top 3 pick as opposed to where he fell. But, if you're gonna fall that far in the first round, I don't think he could have had a better landing spot than to land in New England for all the reasons I said and for all the reasons Joe said.
Okay.
Newton's the bridge guy, and that's all he is. And they're going to spend the next year getting Mac Jones to the point where he's going to be the next New England Patriots quarterback.
Okay, guys, we are winding down, literally and figuratively, with this show. So, guys, final thoughts on the night. Joe, anything?
Very interesting. I think as we saw, there were certain points, and we all talked about this before the show a lot, was there were certain points in this draft that were going to be the keys. There was that third pick. There was that Carolina pick. There was the Denver pick. There was what was New England going to do? Where was that going to let everybody fall? And then the surprises that came and the reactions to them, because I don't think the Giants moved down if Devontae Smith's sitting there. I don't think they moved down if Horn and Surtain are there, one of the two. But again, it's reaction to it, and this is how this night goes, is being prepared, having all your information, talking to guys the week coming up of, hey, what are you guys thinking of doing? Can we get on a phone call? Like Gettleman said earlier, he said, I've been on phone calls where I've had a trade ready to go, and all of a sudden the guy gets picked and there's nobody on the other line. So it's a very, very interesting night. It would really be interesting someday if they could get a camera into a room with no sound, where you could get somebody, they could show this afterwards and say where they had to react to what happened in front of them. Nobody's ever going to show their board. Nobody's ever going to show anything, but that would be the most interesting thing to sit in on, to see how a board is set up and then how you have to react to what other teams do.
Joe, it's kind of like if you're ever fantasy football draft, then you immediately see somebody is just taken from your fucking queue, and it's just like, oh God, that's how it would react. Just put it in.
Running back from Alabama to Pittsburgh.
Yes, Jay. The first
Jay,
running
got
back
your-
off the board
got your
goes
man,
to
Najee
your
Harris.
team. The first running back
Look,
goes to your board. But what do you think about the whole night in general?
Well, the whole night in general, look, it's a very interesting draft. I mean, we've had drafts, Rabbi, and you and I have been, and Anthony have been doing an NFL draft show for the better part of, in some similar type format on the better part of a decade now. We've railed against, there was a reach or reaches like, what are you doing? There were guys who made picks where we kind of were scratching our heads. I don't know that I would equate any pick made in the first round as an egregious reach. Did it go chalk? No, but the draft never goes chalk, not really. So I'm overall, I think the picks that were made for the most part make sense. I thought the Giants, so great first, the Giants and the Jets both kind of did what needed to be done in the first round. Can't really argue. It'll be interesting to see how the day 2 and day 3 play out. And as as we all know, you can't grade a draft until at least a couple 3 years down the road. But if you take what both New York teams have done this offseason and what they've done with the first round, I think they're off to a good start. So I mean, I like a lot of the picks. I think were done correctly. So I'm kind of and the draft is always fun. As much as I would like things. Rabbi knows, I kind of like order to my universe. You love it when there's chaos, especially when there's good chaos. And I think we can all agree that the chaos that happened in this first round is the good kind of chaos. And before we kind of log off, I got to kind of weigh in on here. Najee Harris. Everybody knew the Steelers were taking a running back in the first round. Harris has been mocked to the Steelers on just about every mock draft. This is a guy who has he makes the good cuts. He has great natural instincts. He's good as a pass catcher out of the backfield. He can wear down a defense. He gets into the hole. He maximizes each run. He's got a great skill set as a rusher and a receiver. Does he need to improve his pass blocking? Yeah, but most star running backs coming out of college need to do that. And Tomlin and the coaches will coach that up in him. I don't think the Steelers could have made this pick any better. There's two ways to improve your rushing attack, and we all know how pathetic the Steelers' rushing attack was. You either improve the offensive line or you get yourself a stud running back. And no disrespect to Javonte Williams out of North Carolina or Travis Etienne out of Clemson. There's a reason Harris is far and away the number one running back on the draft board. great pick by the Steelers. Now they just need Matt Canada to utilize him in the right way.
So Charles,
Alabama, skill position, money.
Charles
Very
Davis
simple.
Charles Davis just compared him to Franco Harris.
Hey, he's not the first one. There are some writers. There are some writers in Pittsburgh who were saying, the word that, it wouldn't necessarily be a bad thing, that if they took another Harris at running back this year, because the last time they did it,
It might be why he did it. They were both named Harris. That's a very good comparison. Harris.
Franco Harris almost went to Cornell, by the way. He went for a visit to Cornell because he wanted to be pre-med, but I think he made the right choice.
He did. 6 Alabama.
So do I.
Six Alabama first rounders, including the ridiculous pick of that offensive lineman Underwood at number 17, but we'll not get into that here because that could take us another 24 hours. But that's the most, and they still have another 8 picks to go, but that's the most for any school in 1 year since the 04 U did it with 6 picks as well. Anthony, final thoughts.
Hey, Rabbi, as Joe said, they play professional football at Alabama.
They do it. They did it to you too. Anthony, final thoughts.
Well, final thoughts is 2 things. So number one, this is why this is one of my favorite draft picks. And by the way, like I said, I'm just happy to be healthy, alive, and be able to do this for another year. And by the way, shout out to Lisa well because she nailed that number 18 pick on the money.
She did.
And Jalen Phillips literally gets to play in the same building that he played in college. But I think about this: how unpredictable is the NFL draft? Did you ever thought you would see the Cowboys and the Eagles trading draft picks? That you would never think 2 teams in the same division would trade picks, especially the NFC East. That's number one. And I do give Jerry Jones credit because defense, and especially linebacker in the Cowboys, is such a need with Sean Lee retirement and Kyle Van Ash kind of a question mark at this point. They have a lot of holes on their defensive side, so that's a start. Number 2, great night for the local teams. I think they just did what they had to do. They got the star quarterback. They got a lineman to kind of start rebuilding that offensive line. The Giants, you know what? Dave Gettleman just had the offseason that no one expected because he took it a free agency. And tonight, the trade with Chicago, and and the Bears are not going to be a good team next season. That's going to be a top 10 pick at whether the Bears finish anywhere between 3-13 or 5-11. That's going to be a top 10 pick. And the Giants just got an extra pick on top of the one they're going to have in their own right. And they feel the need too with their draft pick. And also, like I said, Alabama, you know what? Alabama had a big night. 6 guys in the first round. Look, I've lived in Mobile, Alabama. I was not too far away from Tuscaloosa, and I have parents who root for. I have parents who are basically rooting for rivals. One Alabama, one Auburn. So I know what it's like to be in that very, very passionate area. Alabama Crimson Tide is professional football, and they're just showing it again tonight. And by the way, Nick Saban is recruiting like clockwork, and they're just going to be right back to the national championship discussion next year. So, like I said, it's been a fun night. I'm actually looking forward to what the local teams do the rest of the weekend, because now it's all about filling the need. It's all about filling in those gaps and those holes for next season. Who can come in right away? Who can be a situational guy? Who can be a future impact player down the line? So I'm going to be, like I said, I'm going to have my phone on high alert as the weekend go along.
Guys, there's a couple of things I want to say. The beginning of the draft seemed more status quo than we thought it was going to be, considering we started with the news today that we went with the code red. Sound the alarm, Aaron Rodgers wants to leave in Green Bay, but we actually had status quo. And then we got to number 8 and we had a lot of little moves. We very rarely have seen both New York teams in trades. Obviously, Anthony mentioned the NFC East trade. I think it was a very good night for both of the locals. I agree. Getting a first-round pick next year is outstanding by Dave Gettleman, the messiah of GMs at this moment. It was a very good night. However, before we go, I want to mention another draft pick that we had recently in the On the Sports family. Our very own Sean Roman has a second kid now as of April 12th by the name of Arjun, I believe it's Arjan or Arjun. If he's watching, he's gonna kill me the way I said it, but he had it about 2 weeks ago. So very happy for the now two-time father, Mr. Sean Robin.
Congrats,
We
Sean.
are on the sports
Hey,
line.
congrats.
You.
And Rabbi, we have another teammate reunion. Jaguars just took Mr. Lawrence's favorite running back, Travis Etienne, will join him in the Jaguars backfield this fall.
I don't
It
know
feels,
if that's
it
real.
feels like you're playing a game of kickball in school. And you get to be on your team with your best friend, and you realize it's going to be so much fun. That's what we're seeing a lot. Because we're seeing a lot of reunions on these NFL teams. You see Tua and what's going on in Miami. So it's like I said,
That's another
night.
thing.
It's the theme.
That's another theme for tonight. Absolutely. I don't know how that's going to really look after mentioning about somebody's first and second child, but I mean, whatever. It's been a crazy night already. We are officially out of here. Thank you for navigating these ridiculously choppy waters tonight. This was a crazy NFL draft. Thank you, Mr. Joe Tufaro, for being here once again for the draft show.
Thanks,
Writer
Joe.
for Last Word on Sports. And hopefully this fall, back at your local referees, doing many, many different things, yelling about Mike Pereira or something like that. We'll be having a lot of texts in the fall. For the other people and the idiots still around me, including myself, for Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait, my name is Stephen Rabinowitz. Let's knock out these socials before I lose my voice. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines is where you go if you want to see this show again on demand or compared to performances from last year. Spoiler, I was 1,000 times better last year. Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines if you'd like to have us on in the background while you're watching your favorite game or watching the NFL draft or don't want to listen to Mike Greenberg. And the answer is everybody doesn't want to listen to Mike Greenberg. And you have a link to all of the shows coming the very next day. And I'll do this one at ONTH Sportslines on the damn Twitter. Everybody, it is 11:22 in the evening. Go get some sleep. We made it through 26 picks of this damn draft while we were still on the air. Amazing for us, from all of us here at On the Sports Lines. Good night, everybody.
Happy
Good night,
draft
everyone.
day.